everybody. I hope you're having fun. That's Brother Hal. He is an African immigrant to China. I think he has his passport now, doesn't he? Or do you not know? You don't keep up on Brother Hal? Yeah, I'm asking you.
Me?
Yeah, you.
Oh, okay, no. He doesn't. Sorry, I thought you were going to introduce me first. How rude is that?
I'm going to segue into the introduction, but you need to tell me about. Everybody is curious about the welfare of Brother Hal.
No, he's probably doing a couple of DVD player ads, and probably not DVD players anymore. Just like restaurant ads, some new high tech thing,
No, I'm gonna look this up. I'm pretty sure he got naturalized. Hao Ge, which I guess is how you say Brother Hal in Chinese.
Yeah, Hao Ge.
Oh, he's applying for citizenship. I don't. He's trying so hard. Give him his fucking passport. What's wrong with you?
Damn, that guy's old. He's 37. Fuck.
He had to study Chinese for like 15 fucking years to be that good, and you're still not giving him a passport.
Well, I mean, we all know about the Zuck. He's tried hard. He's tried harder.
Zuck? Like Zuckerberg?
Zuck. He's Zuckerberg. He went to the Chinese uni for like several years. He like even asked, our dear leader to name his first child or something.
That's creepy.
And Uncle Xi's just like, nah.
Yeah, I wouldn't. That's really fucking. I don't know who you are, lizard person. Get the fuck out of China. You're creepy. We don't need your Facebook. Here, let me cut you up a little bit because you are kind of quiet.
Pretty much.
All right, let me know if he's still quiet. Because you are quiet. 1,
2, 3, testing.
Okay, that's perfect. That's perfect.
Hey, everybody.
I think that's better than me at this point. All right, so I think the first thing I just want to bring up, because people were asking about this, we actually talked about this like a year ago, and it wasn't news then, but now it is news. The thing about the titty loans with the thoughts. I'll bring up the Vice article for it.
Sorry, the what?
The titty loans, the nude picture loans. Because that's the big recent news.
The nude loans. Yeah.
Is it still a thing? Because you told me like a year ago that they were cracking down on that.
Okay, so it was so it came into prominence, I think, back in 2016. It was basically just a new way for, I guess, budding. It was started off by a group of budding young venture capitalists who basically wanted to be in the loan sharking business, but also they were, younger than the traditional loan sharks. And I guess they just had a crazy idea and wanted to have a bit of fun with it. So essentially, and because there's a big sort of economic gap in China, which opens it up to this sort of stuff. They had a crazy idea where they would just get young girls, university girls and stuff like that, to send in nude photos as collateral, as security, for them to keep make sure that they make the repayments on the loan. Unfortunately, it ended up that they got hacked, and there is now 10 gigabytes of young Asian women who owe money,
holding up fucking photo IDs of themselves.
Videos, photo IDs, basically, they each sort of started with a video saying, my name is blah blah blah. This is my birthday. I am voluntarily declaring that I am using nudes as collateral, and I borrowed this much, and I need to pay back this much within 1 month. Usually, it ranged from anywhere between like a couple of thousand yuan, which the exchange rate is about $1 to $8 US, I think. So 1 to 2,000, which needs to be returned in 1 month with interest. Usually, interest is like anywhere between 20% to 40%, something like that, within 1 month. It's a good deal. I mean, they're loan sharks after all. And if they don't, then obviously the threat is they release their nudes. I suppose most of them probably did pay back their loans. Culturally, Chinese people are very good at saving and
Well,
paying back
you
their
told me
loans.
this when it was first happening, when it was first getting outlawed, that nobody had their nudes leaked. So I guess this
No,
is
that's why it became outlawed because it got leaked. Not actually because
I
of
thought
the
it was
loan
because
sharks,
they
but
were
because
killing
they got
themselves if
sharked.
they didn't repay it.
No, well, they were killing themselves because their nudes got leaked.
Oh, even though they did repay
Yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, most of them, I imagine, would have. I mean, it's holding your nudes is big collateral.
Was this did the leak happen like a year ago, the big hack that happened, or was that recent?
Yeah, like 2007, I think it was
2017, right? Not 2007.
2017. Sorry, I'm an old man.
So I wonder why fucking Vice is reporting this now, because it took them a year to learn of this, I guess.
Yeah, look, Chinese news takes a long time, probably just because of the language barrier. A lot of shit takes a long time to get into the Western media.
Huh. Yeah, because I mean, well, my take on it when it happened is that they wanted to outlaw it specifically because it was causing women to kill themselves when they need as many women as possible in China to shore up the population, to stabilize the population.
Just as a general sort of a rule, I guess there's not really a system of what China does. Okay, literally, they can do one thing, change their mind for n number of reasons. So it's not like a system of, oh, we can't have women killing themselves because we need more women in the population. No, it was literally, oh, this is bad, let's change the law. There was a in 2000 and it would have been 2000 and maybe 14, maybe a couple of years earlier than that. And this is slight tangent, but I don't know. I think in the US, traffic laws are if the light's yellow, you can still technically go through. So China traditionally has been, if it's yellow, you can't go through, and then they changed it as a trial for like a little while, where it turns yellow, you can go through. Okay, no, actually, no. China, if it's yellow, you can go through, but then they decided to clamp down on it, and they made it so that if it's yellow, you can't go through. And then people complained, and then literally 3 days later, that law got overturned.
Like on a federal level, like the tippy top, this ban happened and was repealed.
No, I believe it was a state level.
Well,
I guess that's less significant.
Are you familiar with I think it's ADC China or ADV China?
No, what's that?
It's these guys that ride around on motorcycles and they talk into a like, I don't know what the connection is between the motorcycles and talking, but they basically ride around on these motorcycles and they're talking into cameras and mics in their helmet, and they're usually very, very negative on China, and they say that they're constantly in fear of protesting the government and being arrested as a spy.
This is like a YouTube channel.
Yes.
Oh, it's that creepy British dude, Spencer.
I don't know if
Probably
he's
shouldn't.
British. I think it's just called ADV China, and they said they recently left. And what triggered that specifically was the streamer who did a cute version of the national anthem and is currently sitting in jail. And they like completely unpersoned her and deleted all of her social media.
Is that true? That's actually so funny. Which guy is it? Okay, I'm looking up ADV China. So the Schadenfreude in me is just like,
why is that funny?
True.
They left because of this young girl having her life completely ruined because she sang the national anthem to the displeasing of it.
Oh, it's just some young girl, not the ADV China people.
They're out. They brought their Chinese wives back home. They're safe. They left because the streamer was arrested She's in fucking God knows where because she's saying the
Oh,
anthem.
was she some other rando Chinese streamer? Was she?
Yes, but that's what triggered it
Ah,
because they
okay, well,
know that was just one of their stories. That's one of the big stories actually. Is that in recent memory is Chinese, like, she had millions of followers. It's not like she was some random obscure bitch that nobody cared about. I'll throw it up and I'll send it to you in Hangouts. But
yeah, please do.
she wasn't a nobody. She had millions of followers across, their media platforms. I think she was a Twitch streamer, and this was right before the Twitch ban. And she basically sang the anthem in a cutesy way, in a kawaii way. And Xi Jinping was like, "Oh, you got to go to prison. You fucked up."
I've never heard of this, so bring it on. I'd be interested that they throw you in jail for that. Fuck, China is scary.
Yeah, that's what that was. The video I watched just before this was the title of the video was "China is changing in a scary way." I think that's how they put it. And they're talking about what you showed me before with the basically not only does China have CCTV everywhere like the UK does, but they have AI.
It's starting to. It hasn't yet, but that's the plan. That is the plan.
But it has facial recognition technology, so basically they can keep track of where you go whenever you go.
Yeah, look, they're developing. You could say it's probably in maybe alpha or beta at the moment. The it's still being tested. It's not everywhere yet. It's not rolled out. They don't yet have the infrastructure, the same infrastructure as the UK, where they install cameras everywhere. But no, being China, it's probably very fast. I understand last year there were 3 instances of criminals that got caught. Wanted criminals because they basically wandered into a concert, or they went to a concert and then the facial recognition picked them up and they got arrested. So 3 instances of I guess you could call it payoff.
People are cheering on Xi for being on Thought Patrol. It's a big thing right now. People are very happy to see women get wrecked by the system. Have you heard of the Thought audit?
I have, yes. That's quite funny. I actually think that's fucking hilarious.
This is the Chinese version of the Thought audit.
What are they actually doing? I probably know more about the Thought audit than the Chinese one.
Wait, are you asking what what they're doing?
Yeah, what are they doing in China? Like,
I'm
guessing it's not the same as a tax audit.
This is just an arrest based off a new law in 2017. The government introduced a law that made it a criminal offense to disrespect the national anthem, modifying lyrics, distorting the music, or misrepresenting it in any way. I mean, being thrown into jail for 15 days. Well, I guess that's not that bad. That's kind of shit, but it's not.
Yeah, it's kind of shitty.
But it's not as bad as I thought it would. I thought they would just like kill her or something. But her career is over because they completely like destroyed. They totally deleted all of her social media, and that was her job.
Oh, well, shit. I understand they introduced a new law just recently, probably in the last month or so, that if you owe more than 15,000, I'm not sure if that's dollars or yuan, but if you owe more than that in taxes, you can't leave the country.
That's funny.
Like, they just put full on travel bans. And this was all sort of triggered by the big Chinese movie star Fan Bingbing. She's good looking girl. She, on her tax returns, she filed a certain amount, and it turns out that she accidentally leaked some of her like actual payment checks and stuff like that. And turns out she was making something like 300 times what she declared in her tax, and she had to basically end up paying something like $8 million US.
That would fuck you over in fucking the United States. They would put you in jail for that in the US.
well, they're supposed to put you in jail. Well, the irony of that is that you definitely go to jail for that in China too. But what happened about 8 years ago was that some well-beloved provincial leader fucked up on his tax, and he was going to go to jail too for the same sort of reason. And they made a loophole. They made a loophole in the law that basically allows you to fuck up once, literally to save this guy, and that's what the lawyers of fun being used.
That's funny.
And now she's not going to jail. But she's been given a stern warning, paid, like $8 million US or some shit in tax. Is it 8 or is it 15?
It's funny that they
some
even care
massive
enough to let her use that loophole. You would think they would just say, well, you fucked up once this other time, or we're not even going to play this game with you. You're just fucked. Sorry. It doesn't apply to women.
Yeah, look, if she was somebody else, they would have probably thrown her in jail. They probably would have, literally, it's because they didn't want to throw her in jail. There's not exactly like the system of law is literally whoever the guy who's currently on toppest of the top decides. So it might not have been Xi Jinping who decided this, but it was somebody sufficiently high enough that just didn't feel like throwing Fan Bingbing in jail on the day. If he felt the other way, she'd be in jail right now. That's basically how it works.
Well, I was going to warn people at the start of this that I would expect you to be usually, at least compared to Western standards, like more sympathetic to China.
I definitely am. We just probably maybe haven't touched on a lot of that. I look by Western standards, at least by China fearing Western standards, I'm definitely more pro China. At the end of the day, look, I'm more centrist than anything. I kind of take everything as is, and I see the pros and cons of both, and I guess I'm quite comfortable and relaxed about it because I personally I'm confident that I can navigate my way through China well enough to not have any issues.
Somebody in
so I'm quite relaxed, but it is objectively scary.
Somebody has repeatedly asked about smart cities or AI controlled cities. Is that one of those like goals in China that all the different municipals rush to complete?
It is goal. Yes, it is one of the major goals. And this is probably one of the good things I like about China. Now, China, I remember like years and years ago when I was working, we did some work with the Chinese, translating some software and stuff like that. I'm not a software engineer, by the way, so don't ask me to anything too technical. But basically, they seem to work at a speed of about 7 times that of the West. Everything. It's a sort of a good standard to work on. Anything in China will happen 7 times faster. So we basically gave them a big phrase, something like 35,000 phrases to translate, to internationalize a piece of software. We gave them 6 months to translate it. They came back like 30 days later and said, "Here, look, we've translated." And our company, which at the time was Australia's biggest software company, just didn't know what the fuck to do, because literally we planned for this to come back in 6 months. It came back in 1 month. We had nothing allocated to go the next step for it. So we were kind of fucked.
Somebody's asking now, like, why is a Chinese person in Aussie land? And I'm pretty sure Australia and New Zealand are just Chinese colonies at this
point. Most countries are Chinese colonies at this point.
Well, since you fucking bring it up,
I went to France recently, and I lived in Paris for a little while. It's a filthy shithole, but and I didn't speak a word of French. I only spoke English and Chinese, and nobody fucking speaks a word of English in Paris. But hey, look, I got along fine just speaking Chinese. I bought phone cards, I bought the plug adapters, I ate food. I didn't really have to speak any other language other than Chinese. It was great.
Pig's feet?
No, I ate chicken feet.
No, you said
you skip out on leg day.
You went to a fucking fancy Parisian restaurant and you got pig's feet.
Oh no, yeah, okay, no, that yeah. Sorry, I thought you meant the Chinese one. I was thinking of a Chinese one. No, I went to like some fancy in quotation marks. It looked fancy. It acted fancy. It was bullshit. French food is garbage.
We'll describe
like, literally, I thought I was going to get some. Okay, so I was expecting like a pork knuckle. If you go to any German restaurant, you order there. I think it's called a Schweinhaxen. or something like that. It's basically a pork knuckle. It's meaty, it's delicious, it's got crackling. Oh, it's just so good. It's mouth-watering, right? And I thought, all right, so this must be the same thing, you know, because France, Germany, very close to each other. So I ordered the pig trotter, and no, it was just the sad tiny foot. It wasn't a pork. It was literally the foot with the toes. And this one, I should say, the Chinese have pig trotters as well, which are sort of stewed in like spices and soy sauce, and is actually fucking delicious. And they keep the fat on it and the gelatin. It's actually amazing. The French just had the sad little pig foot with all the toes, and you can tell it was a pig's foot, and it was just sort of cut off at the ankle, and it had the nails on it, and it smelled.
You had the nails.
Awful. Yeah.
Well,
they didn't know how to. They didn't know how to turn it into
tendon
food.
and shit.
Yes, it had tendon and shit, but this was a particularly skinny trotter, so there wasn't any meat on it, and it just smelled like a pig foot. If that's that's any way to describe it. Okay, so the Africans, I know they eat pig foot. I've never had African pig foot. A lot of ethnicities eat pig foot. The Chinese eat pig foot. We turn pig foot into food. We like cover it in spices, herbs, stuff like that. It turns out delicious. Okay, we stew it so it's soft, it's edible, it's delicious. The French kind of just boiled it, and it must have been kind of like semi al dente because they didn't boil it very well. It was just this pale looking thing. It was pale, it was sad, it was tiny, it smelt like a pig's foot, and it wasn't tasty. And it was like 14 fucking euro. Which is,
it's like
I think,
almost
25 bucks. It's like 25 US, I think.
No way. It's not that much.
No, I mean, we can have a look. I mean, 14 EUR to USD is
15.
Oh shit, the euro's gone down. It's like 16
it's
US
gone down
dollars.
And the US
what the
has gone
fuck?
Up. Erect.
Yeah, what the fuck has happened? That's amazing.
Because Europe is a fucking dump. That's what's happened.
All right, guys, take your trips. Take your trips to Europe right now. If the airfare is cheap, you're getting good value. You're getting good value.
You're getting good value, and it might be the last time you have to see.
Don't go to Paris.
Go to Paris if you want to riot. There's a riot going on with Paris right now.
If you want to vape at the Arc de Triomphe.
Do you want to wear your yellow vest?
You wear your yellow vest and basically just breathe in fumes.
Well, you mentioned the Chinese, everything being a Chinese colony. Which actually, before I ask you about Africa, because Africa is something that's going to be fun to talk about.
Oh, do we want to answer the guy with a question about the tech cities?
Didn't we just answer that? Well, let's go back to that in a sec. Because somebody specifically asked me about how not Africans, how the Chinese eat chicken feet. She was particularly disgusted.
You want me to answer that now?
Yeah. How do you eat chicken?
Okay, so
she's disgusted by the concept.
So chicken's feet is actually fucking delicious, right? Just go to any what do you call it? We call them. You might call them dim sum or dim sum restaurants. They're basically like southern Chinese restaurants. They're either called yum cha or they're called yum chas in Australia. I think they're called like dim sum restaurants or something in the UK. And you might find some. If you manage to find a dim sum or a dim sum restaurant in the US, because I've only seen like sort of shitty Chinese takeaways. Okay, so chicken feet. The way to make it not disgusting and actually fucking delicious, to actually make it delicious, is what they do with chicken feet is they will marinate it in black bean and garlic and chili, for a certain amount of time. And then they will deep fry it so that it becomes crispy, all the skin and the mini tendon and stuff. And essentially, it breaks down all the protein and cell walls and stuff by deep frying it. It basically breaks it down, and then they will steam it with black bean, garlic, and chili, and then it becomes puffy. And that's where you get the delicious flavor. And you get the delicious texture, and it's actually fucking amazing. And I'd recommend it.
Do you
It
like
should look
gnaw it off
dark
the bone
and
like a chicken wing, like the meat?
no, it's the meat, literally the chicken feet meat, and there is some meat in the bone and stuff, but the outer covering, which is that sort of scaly skin that you see, that becomes a puffy sort of a. It becomes a lot like just normal chicken skin. It becomes quite puffy and delicious.
Well, you converted a few people in chat to winning chicken's feet. I don't know. I'm not that adventurous.
Look, I'll see if I can. It's no, okay. It's actually delicious, and I grew up in Australia, so I'm probably quite discerning, but it is actually delicious. I'll give you a picture of what it's meant to look like.
While you're doing that, somebody actually asked a really good question that I think we can knock out real quick. He asked about WeChat payments making credit cards obsolete. We've talked about this before, how paying with credit card is to the Chinese like paying with check in America. It's something that's like, why are you doing this? You're wasting my time. Just get WePay out and pay.
Okay, I feel like we might have to do a couple more episodes on China because like it seems like we're kind of going everywhere, and there's a lot of stuff to talk about here now. So basically, historically, China has skipped when the West had emails. China kind of missed out, or I guess skipped that, and went straight to like personal messaging services. So Chinese people will look at you weirdly if you ask for an email. They all kind of have an email, but that's not the thing that they use. Email is kind of like our standard of communication in the West. In China, no, it's more like any of the personal messaging services. Generally, WeChat. WeChat's huge, by the way. Literally, it's people are more or less. It sounds worse than it is when I say environment locked, because they're not. But it's so handy that you don't need to leave that environment of WeChat. Okay, so Chinese people skipped emails, went straight to personal messaging services, right? And then when the West got credit cards, China kind of skipped that and went straight to personal micro-payment systems, a la WeChat. So years ago, it used to be all cash. All the Chinese stores not in China are still from the 70s. They're all cash. China is like an episode of Futurama these days. Everything from the street vendor that sells chicken feet off of a fucking shitty looking cart, you can pay via personal payment systems. They've got a little code that's probably stuck on the corner of their cart. You snap that up with your phone, and then you just pay them whatever amount. So it's more or less quite cashless.
Chicken feet cooked in gutter oil, because gutter oil is the thing people are talking about right now.
So gutter oil was a thing 20 years ago. I'm sure there's still gutter oil around. I mean, there's always, pariahs, I guess.
You want to describe what
mostly it's gone. Okay, so gutter oil is when restaurants, regardless of where you are, in the Western China, when restaurants, they cook all that stuff, there's a lot of oil, there's a lot of trash, and it basically more or less goes down the drain. And by the end of a night in a restaurant district or in a street full of restaurants, the sewers or the gutters are basically filled with, the refuse or bin juice, as we call it here. But the top layer would just be oil from all the fucking cooking that's done, okay? And probably 20, 30 years ago, even as close as probably 20 years ago, there would be small-time cottage industries where they would basically go open up a sewer grate, and they would basically scoop all that, the liquid out, and then they'd take it back, and then they'd like run it through a machine, a centrifuge or something, and essentially they'd extract the oil out, they'd boil it, they'd get, they scientifically, they'd boil out and get rid of all the impurities, and it comes out just like shiny brand new oil. At the end of the day, it's still fucking gutter oil, but that was quite prevalent about 20 years ago. Look, a lot of this news that you get in the West is quite old. Gutter oil is very small. I would say like lower than 10% now. Probably even lower realistically. I haven't been back to China for a while. Just because it's the economy in China has changed drastically. It's not worth getting gutter oil anymore, and it's not worth the massive risk of getting caught, because they kind of clamp down really tight on that sort of
They
shit.
outlawed it.
The Chinese consumer expect better now, and unfortunately, the Chinese middle class is a very strong. I'm not going to say a voting bloc, because you don't get to do that in China, but it's a very strong, the equivalent of a lobby in the US, I suppose. At the end of the day,
as long as the fried food doesn't have gutter oil in it, they're complicit with whatever else is going on. Basically,
they're complicit with a lot of things. Yes, there's certain things that they won't stand for. For example, gutter oil. But a lot of other things, like the disappearing ink girl. It's like, it's okay, it's fine.
Is convincing us China isn't shit? Is this just Aussies shit posting? Is it? Are you just shit posting right now?
No. I'd happily go to China. Look, last time I went was 2015. Huge changes since then. China has pretty much become, in certain parts of it, kind of like an episode of Futurama, just because it is quite advanced, it is quite futuristic. A lot of homegrown Chinese companies, for example, what are your options when you buy an electric car in the West? Tesla. In China, you probably got about 30 different options. My family has an electric vehicle. It gets something like 100 miles a gallon, or whatever the equivalent is. It basically costs like about $2 per 100 miles or something like that. Maybe it's in kilometers. Maybe it costs about $2 per 100 kilometers. That's how much it costs their electric car to run. It's made by BYD, which is a Chinese car company. There's probably maybe 10 to 30 other electric car options, and they're not very expensive. In the West, you can pay out the ass for a fucking Musk flavored Tesla, and that's basically your only option. In China, you've got a lot of options.
Okay, and on the last thing I can think of regarding food before we go back to Africa or go back to the AI cities, we'll do the AI cities.
Yeah,
is the boy eggs. People are desperate for information on boy eggs.
Boy eggs?
Yes.
As in, what are they?
The virgin boy eggs. When you they get the high school boys to pee into a jar, and then they get eggs and they poach them or something in the pee.
Oh yeah, okay. So the thing about I guess media or stories like that is that it's like that age-old story where it's like, oh, I built the school, but do they call me Bob the school builder? No. I built this fence. Do they call me Bob the fence builder? No. But I fuck one monkey and now I'm Bob the monkey fucker, sort of a thing. It's like that. So it's really not prevalent. I have no doubt that it probably still happens somewhere, but we are talking such a small, minute fraction of the population that does anything close to it. Yeah, look, it'd have to be some rural mountainous village. It'd have to be really far off. China is actually vastly, vastly different to what is in most Westerners' minds. Even sort of woke individuals, I suppose.
The real question is if there's ever been virgin boy eggs cooked in gutter oil. That would be the ultimate Chinese delicacy.
I'm gonna say no. Logically, because gutter oil is a city thing. Virgin boy eggs is like a mountainous rural village, deep fuck off sort of. I will never end up here sort of a place thing.
What are milk dogs? Is that like a? Have you heard of that before?
No, I haven't. What's a milk dog?
I don't know. I imagine some people drink dog milk somewhere in China.
Sure. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what milk dogs are.
All right. So, what did you have anything else to add to the AI cities?
I understand dogs, by the way, are delicious. I've had, I think, in my life, 2 opportunities to eat dog. I couldn't. I personally, I really like dogs. They're loyal, and animals showing loyalty is a good trait to have. And I couldn't eat a dog just probably out of principle. But I've had 2 opportunities I didn't want to. But apparently, and I've read articles, I've seen YouTube channels of like Westerners eating dogs, and apparently dog is delicious. And I'm really sad about that because, I'm missing out on something that is delicious, unfortunately.
Yeah, people were going to ask, well, why did the Chinese have no souls? Why are they a hive mind, insectoid hive mind?
Because they're not Christians. Oh. This is why they have no souls.
They're not Jewish, really. Let's be honest here.
Jewish or Christians, whichever denomination subscribes to the concept of souls. We don't have that, so
we read something yesterday about a Jewish convert being mad that ethnic Jews don't call her Jewish, and somebody replied to her message saying that in one of the Jewish books, it says that when a Jewish couple sleeps together and they don't produce a baby, they still create a soul, and that soul goes to the Jewish converts. So you got those Jewish couples hard at work producing souls and shit, but they it goes to the Christians first, not the Chinese. The Chinese is such a big market, and it's hard to get imports for Jewish souls in China. So
yeah, it's not a fashionable or trendy thing. It became so a little bit like 10 years ago, but I think it died down. Probably I think the government put a stop to it just via brute force.
The Jews just need to market the souls as being an aphrodisiac that grows your penis, and then you'll have Chinamen in Israel forcing Jews to fuck so they can harvest the souls and send it back home.
They'll make factories.
like the pharaohs building pyramids with the Jewish labor, they'll just have Jewish sex factories for harvesting souls.
I guess so. I mean, trust the Chinese to industrialize anything, really.
Oy vey. All right, so AI cities.
Oy vey. All right, AI cities. There was one in particular that was literally they just decided to build a city and make it like all advanced Xiaomi AI. Let me look it up real quick. Do you know what off the top of your head? Do you know what it was?
No, somebody just asked a question.
It was a smart city.
Is Xiaomi is it a company, or is that what they call AI?
Xiaomi is the company that makes the cool shit. So, admittedly, I'm a bit of a Xiaomi fan. I've got a Xiaomi phone. They've been called the Apple of China, probably because of their aesthetic is kind of like nice, sleek looking, but they're like maybe like a third of the price. For the same thing, so they're good value. I've got a trash bin that opens up by itself, and then like it has these blades in the lid that like heats up and seals the bag, so you don't have to touch any trash.
Really?
You just press the button. Yeah. So what it does, it like
you trash can.
Yeah, it's a Xiaomi trash can. It's got an infrared thing where you like wave trash in front of it, it opens up, and you chuck it in. When it's full, you push a button, and these like 2 heated blades in the lid like crosses over and then cuts the top and then seals it, so that now you've got like this sealed package of trash, and then it opens up the lid by itself, and you just take out the trash, and then it closes the lid by itself, and then it vacuums down another bag. So essentially on the lid, it's like a big plastic tube that's all folded up, and then the blades in it, the heated blades in it seals the bag. And then obviously once the tube comes, it vacuums the tube down with the sealed end down, and then when it's done, it seals the top end, which also seals the bottom end of the next bag, and it vacuums the tube down further, and then you throw the old trash down. It's called the Xiaomi trash can. You can just look it up on Google. I recently bought one of those. What else do I have? I have Xiaomi. I have Xiaomi lights all over my house, so it's like I've got like a Amazon listing device.
Has Apple lost its dominance in the market there? Because I know for a while iPhone was the must-have.
It's losing dominance. It's still quite popular, but I'm actually not sure. It might not be. It's definitely losing. Has been losing for the last 2 years. Mostly because of a homegrown competition, but also because it's become less trendy. Like, 10
Well,
years
Apple's
ago,
become
15 years ago,
shittier
whenever.
after job side in general.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, whenever a new iPhone came out, the line outside would go for like a kilometer outside of an Apple store in China. Recently, for the iPhone 10, they put barricades, they hide security guards. Literally, there was like 6 people in line. So there's a big difference. Definitely a big difference in the market.
Well, I was tempted to get Xiaomi actually, because my Huawei met an unfortunate fate of getting crushed to death by my fat fucking ass. So,
Yeah. Also the CEO's daughter recently got arrested. So it's bad omen. Bad omen. Time to change.
what? Who did? The Xiaomi guy?
No, the daughter of the Huawei CEO recently got arrested in Canada. US looking to extradite her. China really pissed. Very angry.
Huh.
She put in a court order to suppress the reasons, so we don't know the reason, but it's probably something to do with like some antitrust,
Seen a
basically
fucking thought, probably.
trying to sneak in, like Huawei technology and having various functionality that the US has banned. For example, like Amazon listening device.
Huh. Oh, did they ban Amazon's? I get fucked. That's such a creepy piece of shit. Didn't you buy one of those?
Yeah, no, I have it. It's controlling my lights and all that
Your
sort of shit.
Xiaomi lights?
Yeah, it's controlling my Xiaomi lights. That's about it at the moment.
Okay. Oh, before I forget, you mentioned that Paris is a dump. Uh, some
Absolutely.
a Russian woman asked me to ask you that her mom went to China at some point and said that the cities there were cleaner than the cities in Europe. I guess you would say that's
Yes.
on average.
Yes.
That's true.
Yes. Like I said, the picture of China is vastly different to what like the vast majority of Westerners think. Standards are very high now, especially in the international cities like Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, and stuff like that. When you have a burgeoning middle class that suddenly rises to like economic validity, I suppose you could call it, they have demands, and one of their, as any middle class, one of their demands would just be clean streets. And when you have the number of people demanding clean streets as you do in China, the government kind of has to do something, because the last thing they want to do is piss off the middle class. They don't want any sort of uprising.
Okay, so I guess what I want to save stuff about like a Chinese collapse for last, because a lot of people are speculating that, especially with the ghost cities, that they're saying that's like a sign of
Okay, so
central
the Ghost
planning.
Cities thing is like, once again, is like 15-year-old news. There's this city in Odysee. It's a place in Inner Mongolia. It's a mining town. They decided to build an entire city to support this mining town. So now, and obviously they all got snapped up. They all got bought up. But who the fuck wants to live in a mining town, really? But because of the culture, owning a house is still like the thing that everyone wants to do. That's why, say in the US, the rental returns for a property is quite high compared to the actual cost of the property or the value. In China, it's the opposite. The rental returns is like maybe 1 to 2% as opposed to about 5% in the West. And the housing prices to purchase is astronomical, just because everyone wants to own. They just feel culturally, they just feel better about owning
As they fucking
a
should,
place.
because renters are slaves. There's a Bible verse about that. I think it's Proverbs 22:7. I told you about this. I told you about my Bible
Yeah,
verse.
yeah, no, I understand. It's true to some degree. Like in the West, yes, just because you're paying a lot to rent, but in China, it makes more sense to rent right now, just because you're paying very little. Like there's basically an economic cutoff point. There's basically a logical cutoff point to where it's better to rent than to buy, or vice versa. Like it's nothing to do with principles or or you know like personal core values or anything like that. For me, it's literally there's an economic cutoff point somewhere.
All right, so let's go back to Africa because we've been delaying that. I need to play Toto's Africa
Yes,
now.
that's a
People, okay, everybody knows, and I'll give some backdrop on this. Everybody knows that in Africa, although I knew about this before most people because you told me about it, that China was very heavily invested in particularly the Western Africa, correct? Like Nigeria?
Western. Yes, I guess so. Yeah, Western Africa.
And most people don't know this, but there is an African Union that is kind of the same as the European Union, and the African Union very generously had its headquarters built by China, I think, without any money expected in return. Like China just built
Oh
the
no,
African.
literally, China just said, "Hey, look, we're gonna build a headquarters for your African Union, right? It's gonna cost 200 million US, and we're just gonna build it for you." And
Two
they
hundred
said
billion.
200 million.
Oh, I was gonna say, Jesus fucking Christ, that's a lot
And
of
the
fucking
African
money
Union
for
said,
building.
and the African Union said, "Really?" And China said, "Yes." The African Union said, "Cool, thanks. Let's get it done." And they got it done.
So, in general, what you've described is that what China wants is wood. And Africa happens to have a lot of wood. So, what they're doing right now is they're having the African countries sell them very massive trees so that they can make tables out of them. Is that
So
the truth?
it's yeah, the general direction is correct, but it's not wood. It's literally any resource that African can stump up. You know, we're talking gold, we're talking diamonds, we're talking wood, we're talking marble rocks. Literally anything that they'll cough up, China will take. Look,
Uh,
this the strategy here. The strategy here now. China, unlike the West, who I think works on election cycles, China has long because it's one government. Okay, it has all its strategies are based on sort of long-term investment.
Yeah, the
So
hundred
that's
year
why
plans.
slowly,
Like
yeah, so
the
it's
big
slowly
one
gaining.
is people ask, well, Taiwan isn't really part of China because it has this government. Like Taiwan and Hong Kong are on the plan. They've got 100 years. Either they're going to become independent before this 100 year plan, or they're not going to be. They're going to be completely integrated by the end of it. Because that's how China works.
Yeah. So basically, they've done in the last probably 30, 40 years, they've done all sorts of things like, they've slowly gotten all the little countries, all the little, I'm going to call them little shitty island countries in the UN to like, vote with them in a block. They've basically infiltrated Africa and are sort of, laying out essentially what the British did to like Asia and Africa, back in the Empire days. China are kind of doing the same thing, not with guns, but with other, I guess, soft power, as they say.
They're
Um,
not rolling tanks down Taipei, is what you're saying.
yeah, they're not doing that anymore. It's more oh, so it's more things like this. So when I was in Paris, okay, there was I went to this Arabic corner store to buy some like ice cream because it was hot. And the owner who was this sort of fat looking chic fella. He looked like who's that guy from I don't know if you've ever seen Apocalypse Now, but that guy that talks like this is just this fat, Egyptian looking fella, and he was from Egypt, and he said, "Are you Chinese?" And I said, "Yes, why?" And he said, "Oh, thank you, my brother, thank you." And he almost came up and hugged me. And I was kind of afraid because it's Paris, but but he was very friendly and he said that he kept thanking me and I said thank you, thank you, thank you. And I said, "Oh, why?" And he said, "Oh, because I come from this small island in or near Egypt or something, and even the government won't install any sort of infrastructure. And then Chinese Huawei came in and installed all the telecommunications.
Are you talking
And
about
now
like
we
the
all have
Turkish side
fucking
of
really cheap phones."
Cyprus?
Sorry?
Like the Turkish side of
I,
Cyprus?
I don't know. I don't know what he just said. He lives on some small island maybe his English was shitty and he meant something else, but it was some small place where even his own government wouldn't install telecommunications, but Chinese Huawei just came in and installed telecommunications. Now, obviously, there's going to be all sorts of like listening devices, and this is a sort of a soft projection of power as well. Now this entire island, including this motherfucker who has a shop in Paris, who has nothing even to do with this island anymore, is thanking some random Chinese guy who had nothing to do with the installation of his telecommunication system. But hey, I'm being thanked.
Well, yeah, he's like a guest in France, but if any fucking Chinaman wants to lay his head down, he's got a bed for him, apparently.
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. So, you can see how, I guess, grateful these guys are. So I imagine that China is basically doing that en masse just as a general political strategy. They're paying off debts from the little island and stuff because, they're basically buying their votes in the UN sort of thing. So this is sort of China's long-term strategy of getting soft power, asserting soft power. Now that doesn't mean China doesn't assert dominance, which it's become its sort of normal strategy within the last probably year and a half, 2 years now. And this is the scary part of China because you see some airlines acknowledging Taiwan or Tibet or something, and then suddenly their fucking CEO gets his dick cut off, and then management gets fired, some guy loses his job, life gets destroyed. Chinese people are in uproar, and suddenly their company apologizes. Look at Dolce & Gabbana recently. Look at Valve.
Well, okay, that's the interesting thing is that before we get too off topic, we'll get back to that. I'll write it down. But there was the Hilton Suites was the one that you showed me a while ago. That
this was about 2 years ago.
What happened is
was it Hilton? I can't remember if it was Hilton, but it was some.
But basically on their website they had like a little visa guide. So you selected what country you wanted to go to, and it would give you information about how to rent a room at a suite in that country. Well, because the visa requirements for things like Taiwan and Hong Kong and China are all different, and especially different for Tibet. Tibet, I don't think to this day you can go to Tibet without special permission as an American. So, they have that segregated on their list because if you want to go to Tibet, they have different information for you. Well, a Free Tibet movement sees that this country, that Tibet's listed as a separate country, and just tweets out a positive tweet like things.
Oh, it was Marriott. It was Marriott hotels.
Oh, okay, but basically tweets out says like, "Thank you for listing Tibet as a separate country." And some poor minimum wage social media employee for the Marriott hotels clicks the like button on this tweet, and
so it was a guy who was being paid hourly as a casual guy. He was from Omaha. His name was I think Roy Jones. I think that was his name. He loved his job. It was just like his dream job. And he basically hit like on a status, and China didn't like it, and then he totally got fired.
Well, you didn't describe it in the best way. He didn't just get fired. The fucking communists just shut down every Marriott hotel in the country. They flat out fucking evacuated these hotels and said, you're gonna fix this. So Marriott had to fire him. He got fired immediately. They had to delete the tweet. They had to say we respect the territorial sovereignty of China or some shit. They had to alter their website.
Yeah, so they didn't actually shut down the account, but they threatened, and that's a big threat. So Marriott basically, it went into like emergency mode for a while.
They fucked them, is what you're trying to say. You're being careful about it. No, China fucked them. They said, you will fix this.
No, I'm not being careful about it. I agree with everything you said. But I prefer to be accurate. They didn't
you
shut down.
You specifically mentioned something about sending in armed personnel to these hotels. I remember that. That sticks out to me.
I can't really remember, but they might have sent basically groups with armed people as a show of force, as a assert dominance, which is, like I said, once again, it's basically China's strategy now. But yes, no.
To get back on Africa though,
Gone.
you said like I remember reading in Quora or something. China was or somebody from Bangladesh, I want to say, that their country took out millions of dollars in loans from China to build infrastructure because they had had a civil war and they were trying to get back on their feet. And China was like the only country willing to foot the bill for basically rebuilding their country. So
Yeah.
is China's game in Africa like that, or are they just trying to like puppet these countries?
It's a very complex matter. I imagine there'd be a bit of everything. You know, it's any sort of they'll do it any way they can, or any way they'll basically do it any way they can. It doesn't really matter to China which way they do it. There's a bit of that the same thing that the US did, I think, in the 60s, where they basically what do they call it? Like economic slavery. Essentially, it's like, you owe us, we'll lend you this money, and you just work it off. But you know, mathematically, they'll never work it off. There's a bit of that going on too now.
What, were they giving them crooked loans that they can't pay back?
Not crooked loans, just very tilted loans towards China. Like like technically on paper, it's like, yes, this is how it works out, and it does work out eventually. Here's a very good example. So China built the MRT system. I think it's called MRT. It's basically just like the rail system in an African country recently. It was great. It the good sides, first of all. Pros, it mobilized entire population. Basically little villages that had no access to cities, had no commerce, because it was like 3 hours walk to the closest city. Now it's like a half an hour train ride. They take a train over, or the MRT or whatever it is. They take a metro over to the city, sell their shitty vegetables, come back in the afternoon. Now they've made money. So it's economically. It's basically boosting a lot of people. On the other hand, it recently got found out that about 1/3 of the revenue from ticket sales of that train system were basically being pilfered by the group of the Chinese managers that were managing that train system.
They were skimming it off the top, like money.
They were skimming, and they were skimming about 1/3. And it was a lot of money.
That's like taking a big fucking shark bite out of a fucking surfboard.
Oh yeah, no, it was basically, they were you buy a ticket, and you know how you can, every system you can issue a refund. They were just issuing random refunds. In short, TLDR, they were basically issuing a bunch of refunds that were fraudulent, and it went into their own pockets.
Well, that's kind of shitty.
Well, yeah.
But like, okay, so
here we go. Local government officials charged with fraud over 3 billion Kenya Railway. I don't know. Do you want me to link it to you or anything like that?
I see it.
A reference.
Is that it? Oh, no, this is a picture of chicken's feet that I never showed people. Yeah, we'll look at that now. Look at chicken's feet right now. Oh,
yeah.
I have to sign it. I have to sign into fucking. Oh, I figured it out. You copied it from Google. In a weird way.
Yes. Sorry.
Those look like carrots almost. Those are unsettling to look at, to be honest.
Just don't think of them as chicken's feet. Just think of them as delicious. Come on, you eat fish fingers, don't you?
Yeah, but fish fingers are like shredded fish meat, reformed into a finger shape. They're not.
Yeah, so technically it's even worse.
It's more processed. It's easier to look at. I'm just thinking you could take the same meal and make it chicken wings. It would probably be 1,000 times better.
No, because it's the thing is, they're very different things. I can't just be like, oh, I would rather have chicken wings, or I can replace chicken feet with chicken wings. No, you can't. It's one of those things where you kind of have to be there. You kind of have to just try it to know.
Okay, if we ever go to Shenzhen or something, I will.
Oh man, I never skip leg day. All right, we got to do this.
All right.
No, you got chicken legs. You got chicken feet. You got the little octopus tentacles. You know, they basically just deep fry. It's basically just calamari.
$3 billion. If you if you steal $3 billion from Kenya, you didn't just fucking steal from Kenya. You fucking robbed it. That's like stealing every brick of gold from the fucking Fort Knox. That's a murder. What the fuck? Kenya doesn't have $3 billion to give, nigga.
Well, apparently it does, and you can see how large these economies are. You know, in the terms of scale. So, like I said, it's got its pros and cons. It means the fact that they can steal $3 billion or $3 billion worth of fraud or whatever the actual figure is, it's basically a very large scale, and it means that the economy is definitely worth much more.
You're making it sound like the pros are, yes, you get the money for the railroad and you get the railroad. The cons are you got to deal with the Chinese. That's how it sounds to me.
Yeah, no, that's exactly how it is. I mean, it is what it is. Like I said, I'm not as pro Chinese as you make it out. I merely just state the facts.
Okay, so
I think the difference is while most people might get exasperated over a certain fact or a figure, I'm just like taking it as is. You know, it's like, yeah, that's what happened.
Well, the one thing I remember the most about like your sayings, you've told me some sayings of China. The one where it's like if like a earthquake happens and a building collapses and 1,000 people die in a horrible pile of flaming rubble, like people are just like, yeah, too many people were living there anyways. It's their fault.
I don't think that's did I say that? What did I say?
You said that it's normal for the Chinese to look at a catastrophe with mass casualties and say something along the lines of, yeah, well, it's their fault for there were too many people there anyways.
That might have been something I said. I think.
Yes.
Yeah, it might have just been a personal opinion.
A personal opinion. Well, as we covered, the Chinese are an insect hive mind, so it's definitely a saying now. It's in the hive mind. You didn't get that from nowhere.
Yeah, look, me being quite removed from all of that, I'm looking at it in the same way as the Marvel guy Thanos. His philosophy. It's like, you know, and you know, and I think the government to some degree looks at it in that way as well. You know, for mines collapse in China every day, killing a bunch of people. But do you see them introducing new safety laws and safety rules? No, not really. They'll just get with
the economy.
Well, no, because they just get another group of working poor to replace those dead guys.
Well, I'm saying it would fuck with the economy to add rules.
Oh, yes. It would. It means you'd have to adhere to like safety standards. And you know, that costs money and energy and you know, something that the mine bosses don't really want to deal with.
Well, that's what happened in the US.
Generally, being a very sorry?
In the US, that's like Trump's philosophy, is that the EPA and all these different governmental regulations that have made it impossible to do business in the US have allowed China to take over.
Take over in the US or internationally?
Well, to overcome the United States economy.
Domestically or internationally?
In general, the GDP of China is higher than the U.S. now. And Trump blames that primarily on oversight committees and regulations.
Oh, look, my personal opinion on that is simply because China has just the people power. Like when a market is, you know, U.S. is 300 million people. China is like 4.5 times that, more than 4 times that. When talking about GDP, we're talking about China's GDP overcoming the US's. We're not talking about per capita. We're talking about overall GDP. And for a country with a population that's 4 times the US, of course, it's inevitable that the GDP will go over the US. But if you look at it per capita, US GDP is, you know, whatever, 40 maybe it's like 20 to 30,000 per capita. China is still sitting at like maybe 10,000. So when people say
per capita,
China's GDP, yeah, China's GDP is not is nowhere near beating the US per capita GDP. But when people say China's GDP is taking over the US GDP, it's the overall GDP. And I mean, come on, with a country, the population that has 4 times that of the US, of course it's going to overtake the US.
Well, eventually, and kind of.
I think it already has.
No,
I think it happened mid 17 or something.
Yeah. Well, you told me at some point, I think, that what China wants to do, what it wants to do, is be like the Americas in the 1950s with a high middle class, and most of the unskilled labor being outsourced to African countries, while China maintains a higher standard of living.
That might be the plan. It's not working out so well because they're finding it difficult.
Say it. Say it. You know you want to. Chat wants it. Say it.
What am I saying? Well, look, I'll just say what I was going to say. I actually don't know what you know. But basically, they're finding the Africans difficult to work with due to cultural barriers and stuff like that, language, culture, that sort of thing. I think there was one thing, and you know, don't take it as generalization because I only heard it once, but they said the Africans are lazy.
Yes.
Compared to the Chinese.
Yeah, that's what Chat wanted.
Yeah.
That's what Chat wanted.
Okay. Yeah, basically they're saying the African workers were lazy. And honestly, compared to like the average Chinese worker, everyone's lazy.
Well, they don't work 18
especially
hours
the Africans.
Apparently they don't work any hours a day.
Yes.
That's why China's allowed to can quote unquote skim a third of the fucking profit margin and nobody notices. Like somebody was walking and slipped and fell and the papers came tumbling out and they're like, what the fuck? This don't make no goddamn sense. You know what? It probably wasn't even fucking the Africans that discovered the fraud. It was probably like a Chinese tax audit. It was like they had to phone up Kenya and be like, "Do you guys realize that they've stolen a third of the profit?" And Kenya was just like, "No."
Yeah, I think they found it somehow because they were just missing. The numbers just didn't make sense. I mean, when you're taking a third of something, that leaves a big hole. It's a lot of evidence. They should have just taken less. You know, instead of taking 100 million, or 3 billion, they could just take 1 billion for fuck's sake.
Let's not get greedy here.
Yeah, I know, right?
It's the monkey hand in the gourd thing. So you gotta take less. You gotta take less if you want to get away with it.
Exactly. You can't just have a fistful of seeds and now your fist is stuck in the hole. Yeah, monkey.
Yeah, you get fisted by one monkey, and you're just the guy that got fisted by the monkey.
You're Bob the Monkey Fister.
Okay. Covered the Marriott hotels. Okay, people also asked about Chinese people letting their kids shit in public.
Once again, it's probably like... Actually...
I've seen pictures. I've seen pictures of people not in fucking African clothing.
As a thing that's culturally acceptable 30 years ago. Okay? As a thing that some people do because they're just fuckwits. Currently, yes. You get a lot of news stories, and every time it happens, it hits the Chinese media of some rural wank with his rural wank children coming onto the Beijing metro, and they're dressed like rural wank Chinese people from 30 years ago, which is they have a giant hole in the middle of in the crotch of their pants for ease of defecating and pissing, and their kid decides to piss.
Basically.
Yeah, and they basically, they basically piss in the middle of on the fucking train, and then obviously everyone records it. puts it on media. Everyone gets into a fucking a Chinese rap battle over it, and these essentially these hillbillies, they get put on the media and they get blamed, and Chinese media says
Does the media even
this is what
censor
you
the
should
faces like they would in the U.S.? They probably don't, do they?
do. Sometimes.
If they're filming
Generally,
jokes.
not the bad guy. Generally not the bad guy, or what they see as the bad guy.
Well, yeah, that's what I meant. Is they probably intentionally make it as shameful as possible, so that those people go
Yeah.
home to their street shitting villages and spread the good word of not shitting in the street, as opposed to
Well,
to India.
technically they don't shit in the street. They still shit in toilets, but they just have big crotch gaps in
Why are
their
they
children's
pissing on the
pants.
fucking metro? What the fuck?
Because they fucking think it's a place to piss. It's
They didn't get
Like-
they didn't get a hint from all the people standing around on the fucking train that maybe this isn't a place to piss.
obviously, well, that's what I mean. They're obviously fuckwits, right? Because even if you're completely uneducated, but you're not a fuckwit, and people give you dirty looks, you kind of know, right? Maybe this is not the place to fucking piss. This on this flat ground, it's not a gutter, it's not a fucking it's not a tree, but they're just low class essentially.
Well, there's a picture I had of a woman. She wasn't dressed in like royal clothing. I'm calling bullshit on that. She's like in an airport holding a baby over a trash can and just taking a dump in that fucking trash can. And people are like,
Yeah, they're not all from rural villages, but they're still just low class. Like they're just still just people with no class, basically. The reason why you're seeing this picture is because it's not the norm. If it was the norm, people wouldn't be putting it up on media.
all right, but that there is a stigma that the Chinese tourist is the worst of all tourists, right? And
It
there
is absolutely true. And look, once again, not all
No,
Chinese tourists.
You sound
but
like a SJW
the ones that
or not all men.
a lot of them do. They're economically bad.
Well, I brought that up because China is fighting back against the stigma, correct?
They're trying to educate their people, but China has a lot of people. It'll get there eventually.
There was a particular policy that I was hinting at where if you do record a shitty Chinese tourist, if you send that back to China, they will find that motherfucker and they will ban them from ever leaving the country again.
They'll put certain travel restrictions. I'm not sure what the exact thing is, but yeah, there was. I do remember hearing about a policy where they'll put certain travel restrictions. If you get found and seen to as surpass a certain level of acceptability, they'll stop you from traveling for anywhere between 1 to 3 years.
There was that thing you showed me yesterday, I think, where they were talking about how because people were asking a lot about this is the social credit score, which isn't only a Chinese thing now. They're exporting it. They've exported their social credit system to Venezuela. So this is definitely. I think this is going to happen in every country. Basically, I think it's going to happen in the UK and in Germany for sure. Probably France. Probably Sweden. Maybe eventually the U.S. But the U.S. is so paranoid. It'll take a lot longer to get there. But eventually it'll get all.
Okay, so there's some interesting new news about this, and I need to do some more research because I'm not sure what's going on. Okay, so if at the beginning, from what I understand, the social credit system, the Sesame Points, was just a thing that was made by Alibaba. Essentially, it's literally just PayPal. Okay, and it's like a commercial thing, right? It's social credit because it's got some tie-ins to the government, but essentially it's still a commercial thing, and it'll still just a reward and like if you have certain behaviors, if you buy certain things, you get rewarded. If you buy too much alcohol, you lose some points if you buy like
Really?
like nat. Yeah, yeah. If we buy over, if when you get down to the details, for example, if you buy more than a certain amount of alcohol per month or some shit like that, you might lose a couple of points in your social score. Um, it started as a system much like opt-in. I'm trying to think of some equivalent that we have in the West. Like I guess say like PayPal. Say you use PayPal to pay for stuff, but because with China you would use it to pay for everything because it's basically cashless now. But say you used PayPal to pay for everything, then PayPal obviously has a record of what you're buying, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of gamified that. So now it's like, if you pay for your bills on time with PayPal, for example, you get a higher rating. If you lag behind in your payments, you get lower rating. If you buy certain goods, if you buy a certain amount of certain goods,
I was
you get a
talking
higher rating.
to somebody named Coach Red Pill about this. And I mentioned the social credit score, and he was very gung ho, like, oh, this is the breaking point. One day the Chinese people are gonna be like, oh, we don't want this shit, and they're gonna revolt. And I'm like, and from what I heard, the Chinese people just like it because it's like a game now. And it's
a game, so it's you gamify everything. I love the whole idea of gamification, because if you gamify anything from a commercial standpoint, if you gamify anything, it attracts people. It just makes it more interactive. People just love it. Okay, so it's a very effective system. So and I think we had a philosophical talk a few years back where basically, as the way Chinese society is, okay, if you fall in line to what the government's plan is, you can live very comfortably. Your life is amazing. It's good. And I think I linked you to this article the other day. So, if you had time to have a look, if you're even slightly step out of line, they make it very difficult. And the more you step out of line, it becomes exponentially difficult for you to do anything. And as a personal experience, in China, if you buy a metro ticket or a long distance rail ticket, if you buy it from their machines, saving them time and labor, you don't need an ID. You can just buy it. If you want to go to the counter and use a person to pay for the ticket, you need to show ID. So that's just one of the very small examples of if you fall in line and basically fall in line to their system, they make life very easy. And if you step out of line a little bit, they make it very difficult. So the vast majority of Chinese people are in line, not only because of the risk of stepping out of line, but like carrot and a stick thing, right? But also because of the giant carrot that's dangled in front of them if they do step in line. So most people, they like the system because it means they get
like
big discounts.
In the U.S. though, like people ask me, why do I have like I'm very like, even people like on my streams and stuff, they call me out for being sympathetic towards China, but this is something that already exists in the U.S. If I wanted to use the N word with a hard R right now, I could get banned off YouTube. If I say anything
which is fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, if I say anything that's like nasty, like not politically correct, I can't be on Patreon. If I like, there's a whole list. If I make fun of retards on the internet, for instance, I might have to make my own hosting company to even get my website online. There's a whole range of shit that
you might
that is exponentially fucking difficult just because you do something that people don't like. That's already happening in the U.S. If you go to Germany and you make a Nazi joke, you can go to fucking jail for 6 months. So this shit already exists in the U.S. That if you do something that's not kosher, and speaking of kosher, there's an entire group of people that you can't talk shit about at all if you want to have a good life. So if you do anything that's not kosher, you will be fucked hard in the West as it stands. And that's
I had kosher food in Paris, and it gave me the runs. as a
Thank you.
That's a side thing, not hating. It's actually what happened. I'm sure it's not all like that.
That's because you're fucking lactose intolerant. You probably got cream cheese or some shit.
No, it was like some like lamb, and it was delicious, but there's something definitely wrong with it.
Anyways, my point is that what China is doing is just the natural conclusion of that. If you wonder why do we have the Visa card and MasterCard duopoly? Why do we have to rely on PayPal and shit like Stripe? Because people blame Patreon for every goddamn thing. Patreon itself is but a tree swaying in the fucking wind that is Stripe and PayPal. They don't process a dime. They handle not a single dollar. It is entirely managed by PayPal and Patreon. They handle no financial numbers. They handle no information about you. Entirely up to them. So PayPal banned Sargon of Akkad, right? Well, guess what? They can tell Patreon, kick him off, make sure he can't get back. He can't switch from PayPal to Stripe, or we're gonna kick you off our entire platform. And that's like 50% of their transaction volume. Now, the natural conclusion is you're gonna have authorized applications for MasterCard, Visa card, and you're going to use it exactly like the Chinese do, instead of cash, instead of credit card, instead of a check. And the whole fucking the 3 bureau credit score is going to become the exact same fucking thing, because that's what it was in China first. It was just a financial credit score, but then they're like, oh, we can tie in behaviors as well, social behaviors as well. And of course, that's going to fucking happen. In fact, there probably are some things that exist in your credit score that have nothing to do with money, and is behavior as opposed to credit behavior. So don't get too shitty over China. It's coming to you very soon.
Yeah, it's basically in any first world economy, the same thing is happening. It's just that it's probably easier to make a media article about it in China, because China, they don't bother to hide it. Mostly because of the culture of privacy. In the West, privacy is a big thing. In China, not so much. Traditionally, it's been a very communal, a very communal cultured society. Look, you can ask for other people's. You can ask what your salary is in China quite openly. Between friends and stuff, and generally it'll be discussed. I'm Chinese. I'll talk finances any day of the week. And people just share information. It's not like a private thing. People don't have huge privacy issues. In the West, it's a big thing. Privacy is like a big sacred thing in the West. So that's why I guess the West has trouble with the idea that you've got a hidden credit system. But credit cards have had that system for the last probably 30 years. Big data is a thing in the West. Like, I had a mate that had a phone conversation about needing a cardigan with a friend he was talking about, and he just mentioned like cardigan a couple of times. The next morning, he got a Facebook ad.
My mom's done that. My mom's told me,
and it basically,
that they'll sit around.
Yeah, Facebook ad, got a cardigan. He bought it. He was happy.
Well, thanks a lot, asshole, for intentionally poisoning the fucking well. No, my mom.
I should say this guy's Chinese, by the way. He said, because I had some concerns. I was like, doesn't that worry you that you had a phone conversation and you mentioned cardigan? The next morning, you're browsing Facebook and you get an ad for the cardigan, and he said, yeah, I clicked it and it was the exact one I want. It was $20 and I bought it and he's wearing it and it looked good, and it does look good on him. And I said, but doesn't that worry you? And he thought about it for like half a second. He's like, no, it fucking worked out perfectly for me. I got exactly what I wanted. This guy's Chinese, by the way. I think you know the guy I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
My mom even told me the story though that their phones were off. They weren't using them. They weren't in a phone call. They put all their shit in a fucking circle, and they had an open conversation about a topic they had agreed upon as a test. And they just started talking about car insurance or something. And every single one of them on Facebook and on Google were seeing all sorts of ads for car insurance. So it's like this shit's actively spying on us constantly.
Oh yeah. Like any phone, it doesn't really matter. It's basically picking up certain words and it's just giving you ads based on that. And this has been happening for several years now.
I think it's the other way around. They record absolutely everything said around you, and then they like the Google shit where they can subtitle an entire video automatically. Everything you say around a phone is being encoded like that and being translated into text.
I'm not exactly sure how it works, but it seems like that. Like, if I don't know if they're actively recording. If they are, wouldn't that just like use the battery a lot? So they're doing something. There's definitely something going on, because there is some sort of pickup that's happening. I don't know. I just don't know if it's like active or passive or something like that. It's some hocus pocus that I don't quite understand.
Well, my point is that don't get too fucking comfy, because whatever's happening in China, and somebody says we're gonna have the Sesame Score in Europe and throughout the U.S. in 50 years. And 50 years is fucking generous. Like
2 years,
by
if not already.
By 2030 at least, it'll be open. Point. It's not.
Oh yeah, it'll be like I'm pretty certain. Like no, okay. Look, everyone has a credit score, right? In the US, what do you think that is? You know, what do you think that is? It dictates what you can and can't buy. It dictates whether you can take a loan or not. Every time you do anything with finances, they look up your credit score, right? You know, what do you think that is? That's just the beginning.
Somebody's saying that this is too depressing. We need to play the White Girls Fuck Dog song again. Have I shown you that? It's a
no.
It's a song. It's by this guy called Common Filth. I think he like paid somebody to sing this song, and it's just a song about how white girls fuck their dogs. It's pretty great, actually. It's really catchy.
Yeah, if it's catchy, I'll listen to it. I don't care about the content. Just give me a catchy song.
All right. Do you have any additional points? Otherwise, I'm gonna start skimming chat for some questions.
Yeah, no, feel free to open it up to an AMA. I mean, there's a lot. Like China is a big topic, so it's you know, it's very hard. It's going to be impossible to get through everything. So I'm happy to just talk about whatever people want to talk about.
Well, a lot of people are calling you a Chinese apologist, and I fucking knew that they were going to.
No, they can though. I don't. I mean, look, I don't mind. It doesn't matter to me. Like things are what they are. It does like it. I don't have an objective. I don't have a direction. I just call it for what they are.
My question is, like, one guy even a while back says, like, I'm stopped listening because this is obviously like a CPC shill. Oh wait, zero cuck, very great name. This fucker is literally a commie Chinese shill. I'm not listening anymore. Downvoted with 50 downvote signs.
No,
I'm just
well,
curious.
Look, there's a reason why I'm living in Australia. Like I wouldn't live in China. You know, you know, I don't like it. It's not something I would be comfortable with.
Somebody asked me, what are the good, like, people don't help each other in China is the big one. I showed you a story a while ago from a guy on Poll basically saying, don't ever learn Mandarin. You don't want to go to China. And he recounted the story of this guy who busted his head open on asphalt, and they brought him to a hospital. And the doctor's like, "Are you gonna pay for his surgery?" And he's like, "No, I just brought him here because he's gonna die." And the doctors refused to see him. So
yeah. So okay. So what happened was, right? And this, like, it's just so fucking dumb. Okay, basically, some old lady fell over, or you know, some elderly person fell over, had an accident. A good Samaritan brought them to the hospital. You know, fixed them all up, and there was a bill, and the guy, the person who was injured, the elderly person, can't remember, I think it was a woman, accused the younger lady who took her to hospital of being the cause of the accident. Whether, you know, probably because she was looking for a come up or something. And so they eventually went to court. And what the Chinese court did was how the Chinese court reasoned that because you took them to hospital, you must have been the one who was responsible. And that set literally probably one of the stupidest precedents I've ever fucking heard. Because now what it's done is people are afraid to help other people because there's been a precedent set that if you help them and take them to the hospital, obviously you're the one responsible, because a reasonable person who was not responsible for this accident would not be kind and help them out. So that's literally, it's because of this court precedent that was set several years ago. It might have been like 10 years ago, something like that. the precedent was literally set that a reasonable person would not help another person in trouble unless they were responsible.
So,
And that is literally the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard.
so it's not a cultural thing, you would say. It's a
No,
government
no,
thing.
people more or less helped each other before that, you know, to varying degrees. But you know, in general, it was well within the norms. But after that court case, people completely just, you know, stopped. You know, they prefer to look the other way just because they don't want to be held responsible.
There's a particular story that got shared around. It's a book from the early 20th century regarding regarding China. Now this is before the revolution, but the guy from the West who had visited China was talking about how ruthless they were in general, and his story was that I'm trying to figure out how to put this. The Chinese, he described them as a naturally conspiratorial, insidious, deceptive people, and he said that outside of your own like China family, he described was very important in China, and the main reason why is in outside of your family you can't trust anyone. And in their culture, he said that you would be naturally distrusting of everyone. People would naturally not uphold their end of bargains ever. And really, the only people you could trust were people in your own family not to fuck you over. And even then, not always. Do you think that's a fair portrayal of China?
Really, no. When you have a population of over 1 billion, you're going to have a bit of everything, and in some cases that is completely true. In many other cases, no. So it's very hard to generalize over a population that is so, you know, that is so massive.
So I mean, I guess you could say in some parts, like anecdotally, it's possible to have any kind of experience in China because the country is so big.
Yes, and that is absolutely true.
Somebody said I was downplaying how bad things are in China, but the thing is, it's like I don't think most people who say how bad things are in China have been to China. I've not been to China, but
Yeah, look,
considering
for the normal average person, you go to China, everything's the same. You know, you know, you buy your food, you go to McDonald's, you fucking, you know, eat shit, sleep, brush your teeth. For the vast majority of people, life is just life in China. Like, China is not some like place where you fucking open a fucking portal. Now you're on a different fucking planet. You know, it's literally just another country in the world. And as with most modern places in the world, and I've said this to you before, like you go to any modern first world city, international city, it's practically the same. It lacks the flavor and culture that you would see maybe back in the 60s that you saw in movies, you know?
yeah,
And it's all kind of boring, really. Like you go to Paris thinking, oh, there's all this going to be all this like French shit, you know? There's going to be like it's going to be
and if
like
you're
Paris in the
Japanese, you end
60s.
up killing yourself when you go there.
Yeah. But in the end, you go to Paris and you get access to Uber Eats, and you know what they sell? They sell basically the same four things that every fucking city sells: pizza, uh, some sort of Chinese food, some sort of like burgers and fries thing, and some other random shit. Basically, you go to any fucking city in the world, the majority of food will be like Americana. It'll be pizza. It'll be some sort of like Pan Asian and some other random shit, whatever the local fashion is at the time. Same with Paris, same with anywhere in Europe, same with fucking US, same with Australia.
Well, somebody asked,
It's not that vastly different.
people are curious about race relations, and somebody said that the Chinese are naturally very little trust for one another, despite being ethnically homogenous. But China is technically not entirely homogenous. Like, are the Han Chinese really that big of a majority throughout the country?
It's definitely the majority. Yeah,
What is it, like
it's
an
definitely in
absolute
the
majority? Because somebody said like there's 50 plus different ethnic makeups in the country. Like I know that
yeah, but
there's the Yu Chinese and they speak their own language and shit.
yeah, there is 53 ethnic types in China. But the vast majority is Han.
And is
Let me have a
there
look at the stats. It looks like 92% of the Chinese population, more than 97% of the Taiwanese population are Han. There you go. So 92% in China are Han.
92%?
Yeah.
The fuck of a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the Han were successful.
Yeah, no shit.
And 97% of the Taiwanese are Han. Oh, an interesting thing I found out that just a side story that I found the other day was I went to this. Remember that place where you saw kangaroos and koalas?
Yes.
So I remember how they had a sign out the front that pointed to all the capital cities in the world, and had their flags, like Beijing was 10,000 kilometers away, and I don't know if you remember that, but it was for the tourists. They had a sign with like arrows coming out of the sign pointing to where these capital cities are, and in the distance to those capital cities, they have Berlin, London, Paris, Beijing, Dublin, that sort of thing. Because this place is getting more tourists, they've erected a second sign with basically the same thing, but including other cities that aren't capital cities. They included two Taiwanese cities, which was Kaohsiung and Taipei, and they have the little flag logo next to them of all the capital cities. Like the Paris one had the French flag, the London had and they obviously had the Taiwanese flag. And when I looked at it, I had to laugh because the Taiwanese flags were ripped off. and you could tell, like, I instantly knew who the fuck it was. Just fucking Chinese dickhead tourists who basically went with the government line that was, that should be a Chinese flag. It shouldn't be a Taiwanese flag. It's Chinese Taipei,
Did you get 5 cents for it? For ripping off the flag?
No, it wasn't me. This is a trend that I really don't like, and it's been happening more and more. The scary one is the assert dominance. That is basically the Chinese policy now, because China is in a position to do shit like that. I mean, I don't know if you saw the Dolce Gabbana thing, but watch the Gabbana guy. His his name is Gabbana, whatever his first name is, fucking grovel and apologize to the Chinese because he put like 5 shit. I think I told you about the Dolce Gabbana thing. They lost $38 million in one day because they had this big fashion shoot in Shanghai, but then it got leaked that that the guy was like bad mouthing China in a private message. He just said, he put like 5 shit emojis in front of China or some shit like that, and then it got leaked. And then
it was a WhatsApp conversation, wasn't it?
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, and somebody in the conversation screenshotted it and sent it to the CPC, and he got 5 cents. He got 5 cents for that.
Yeah. Oh, you got 5 cents for that shit. He lost $38 million in one day, and it was groveling at China, apologizing for being, insensitive or all that, right? This is China's strategy of assert dominance now. They're in a position to do that, and it's kind of scary. It's scary because, and this is the other thing, it's what I call small dick energy. Okay, China has a lot of small dick energy. It's basically petty shit like ripping off the Taiwanese flag. If somebody says some shit about, if anybody says any shit about China, criticizing it, they get roughed up, man.
Well, it was
so they have a sort of an inferiority complex in a way, due to the small dick energy, and because they are in a position to assert dominance. That's what makes China fucking scary, because they'll take some slight badly, and then they'll basically fuck you over. And that, my friend, is fucking scary.
What happened to Valve? You mentioned that before.
Um,
Well,
okay, so
to
there's a
recap
game
on
called
that,
Dota 2.
let me do it.
Yeah,
Let me do it.
you go ahead.
Okay, Dota 2, popular game, kind of like League of Legends. Uh, and Dota 2 is very popular in Russia and China, and very competitive in China. And there's lots of Chinese players in competitive Dota teams. So usually there's competitions that happen on the mainland between players. Well, I think it was an Australian player who he made fun of the Chinese competitors by calling
No,
them.
it wasn't Australian. He wasn't Australian. No.
But he makes fun of
His
them by
name-
calling them ching chongs. And this gets all the way up to the
Yeah.
party, right? And the party tells Valve. And usually, what happens is Valve defers these decisions regarding players and their behavior to the people organizing the events. Because Valve very, very rarely has any direct involvement in these events, except for the international. And so, Valve just says, okay, organizers, you do what you want to do with this guy. Organizers ask him to apologize. He apologizes. China says that's not good enough and tells Valve, you have to make sure this guy does not come to China, that he's kicked out, he's punished in some way. Or
No. So okay. So Valve does a very hands off thing. Like you said, they say, okay, it's up to the organizers to dish out any sort of punishment. Okay, so basically, these guys were international players, and I think he came from Southeast Asia actually. He plays for TNC Pro, which I think is a Southeast. It's like a Filipino. It's like a Filipino team. And so they have the major of the big competition in China, and so this 6 months ago, this all happened 6 months ago. Valve said it's up to the individual tournament organizers and stuff to deal with it. So this 6 months being fairly quiet, and then suddenly the Chinese tournament comes up, and suddenly and these these guys who were being who said racist shit online were invited, but then suddenly it came down from the local government that they're now banned from the country, or apparently so, that they weren't allowed in. They had visa issues because of that, because of something that happened 6 months ago, which had already been dealt with, which Valve already said, we're hands off. It's up to the organizers, and the organizers were going to allow them to come, except the local government decided to disallow them.
But weren't they trying to force Valve to intervene in this some way?
No, they weren't. But Valve sort of had, because the next international was going to be in China. Valve was kind of between a rock and a hard place, because it's like, then you get the question of, are Valve actually in control of their own product? You know what I mean?
Not if they're going to do business in China.
Yeah. Recently, there's been an update. Recently, Valve put out or I think it was Dota put out an update, which you can just see on the front of blog.dota2.com. Valve came out this is December 3rd. We've been following the recent situation. Valve basically came out now officially and said that team that China banned was wrong. I think it turned out that Valve had made the call. It got really complicated when Valve released their official statement, because it was different to what most people thought the story was, and I'm a bit confused myself about it. But basically, Valve said that it was them that made the call, which could be true. First people thought it was the local government, and there were stories about it was the local government saying it, but Valve came out and said that they made the call. Now, what actually happened in the background, who fucking knows? But the official line from Valve is that they made the call, and basically the team actually did the wrong thing, and they didn't dish out sufficient punishment.
Here, somebody left a comment that I could actually read, and it says, "Wo ai cheng wo, give me money, Xi Jinping." One I can read. I pronounced it wrong though. I still pronounce the ZH thing, fucking like CH.
我来中国.
Zhongguo. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's like I don't know. I learn it. I learn all the. I try to learn all the languages in the BRICS countries, but I doubt I'll ever learn any of it.
Mhm.
I'm American. I can't learn second languages. Okay. People have been asking about the Uyghurs.
Oh yeah, the fucking Chinese re-education camps. Yeah, that's that's basically what you've heard is probably all true, possibly worse.
The thing is that like people are bringing up kind of as a jab, like this is China's thing. But the thing is that what people are asking for in the U.S. is not too different. Like people are very angry about the Muslim immigrants in the United States and in Europe. And it's like, well, what? Okay, they just want to deport them, but China doesn't really have that option. They can't just dump, you know, like
People into mountains.
yeah, no, you can't
Well,
just take 100 million Kazakhs and just dump them in Kazakhstan. Like somebody's gonna fucking notice that shit. It's not gonna
yeah,
be.
yeah, exactly.
It's not gonna be like it's easier to do it this way. And it's like when people talk about these camps and shit independently outside of this conversation, they're usually like, "That's fucking base. That's the best shit I've ever heard." You take the fucking Muslims and you make them eat bacon until they like it.
So what's happening, and pretty much everything that's reported on this particular thing is true. It seems to be the trendy topic at the moment for Western
Well, that's
media.
because yeah, Western media is trying to shore up fucking sympathy for Muslims. They always do.
Basically, what happened was traditionally, as it's something that most Westerns don't know, that is that China has traditionally had a terrorist problem in the Western provinces, in like Xinjiang and stuff like that. Because you know the Kazakhs or what that that entire area, they're prone to to terrorist activity, I suppose, in that region. So China has a bit of a terrorist problem, has had a bit of a terrorist problem even before 9/11. And the local government stuff just deal with it. They don't make a big fuss out of it. They don't start a war over it. They just deal with it locally. And throughout the years it's kind of just evolved to this point where they're seeing it's becoming a big problem. People are becoming more radicalized. And the plan is to basically re-educate them all so that you basically get rid of any seed of un, un, unwanted behavior. So they've basically opened up these. Essentially, they look like big colleges or big jailhouses, or whatever. They're just standard sort of big square buildings, and they just re-educate them in there. They use all sorts of stuff. Some normal, some pretty horrific. They'll beat them if they get out of line, but essentially they come out 3 months later. The idea is that they're reformed, and either they're reformed or they've been, or they're too scared to do anything, or they're now upstanding patriots, or they've been brainwashed. Whatever it is, the idea is they come out and they're less inclined to act on terrorist behaviors.
Somebody says you can't call it horrific. Well, the one thing I heard that was
Why
bad
not?
is that like a kid died in state custody because the mother was taken and the kids were taken, and two of the kids died.
Kids die all the time in all sorts of custody.
See, that's what I mean. That's my fucking. There were too many people living there, anyways. Attitude. You already had too many fucking kids. The Chinaman only gets one kid. You have three. Kill two of them. Now you're even.
No. Well, literally, like recently in Australia, they had a royal inquiry because kids were being killed and treated like accidentally being mistreated and abused in youth detention, whatever. And now one of the kids survived and grew up, and now he's suing the government. So like this shit happens everywhere.
In China, he's suing the government. Good fucking luck with that.
No. I'm talking about Australia.
Oh,
kids die in custody all the time in the US and everywhere. In detention, like people just get treated like shit in detention in general. And China is no different. I'm not saying it's good. It's like I said, it's horrific. A lot of the stuff they do is horrific. Yeah, it is what it is.
The one thing
they'll beat you. They'll
they make him learn Mandarin. There. I support that. I think that as an immigrant that doesn't speak a fucking word of Russian, I think at some point you just need to round up all the taco people, and you need to make them learn English. That's
That's
important.
an interesting one because I actually didn't know that they didn't speak Mandarin.
What? No, they speak Kazaki or something.
Some sort of like Turkish, you know, evolution, I guess. But you know, I thought that if you lived in China, you knew Mandarin. It might be a case of them just forcing them to use Mandarin. I don't know. But yeah, no, that's
No, no,
that's a
no.
new one for me. I didn't
The
realize they didn't actually know Mandarin.
yeah, no, the Uyghurs speak something else. Hold up. I'm gonna look this up now. I'm surprised you didn't know this.
Yeah, no, I honestly didn't.
Uh,
No, I knew they spoke other languages, but it was surprising that they didn't know Mandarin at all, and they had to learn it.
yeah, maybe it's culture language. Modern Uyghurs have adopted a number of scripts for their language, Arabic. What the fuck do they speak? Oh, they speak.
Some
Oh, they
sort
speak
of
their own thing. The modern Uyghur language is classified under the Karluk branch of the Turkish language family.
there you go. Yeah, some Turkish thing.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's what it is. And they've adopted it to a number of different alphabets, like Arabic and probably Chinese in some places. But they make them speak Mandarin, which is a thing I support. I think if you immigrate to a country long term, you got to
Oh yeah.
even if it means that they have to round you up. Oh, and they also banned like there's all sorts. It's kind of like the DPRK that when there's little information, people have all sorts of crazy fucking stories about what's going on in the country. But they
Yeah.
did ban the name Muhammad and they banned facial hair, right?
They banned beards. They banned beards, basically. So all you bearded individuals out there, you know, China's coming to get you.
That's just Xi Jinping being jealous that he can't grow facial hair like the Uyghurs. And
It's
nobody's
true.
allowed to have a more glorious beard.
I mean, that nigga has a smooth face. Smooth as nice.
What else? They banned beards for Uyghurs, but not for the Hui Muslims. I've never even heard of the Hui Muslim. The Hui
And neither have
Muslims,
I.
the Hui Muslims probably don't blow shit up. That's why they get a pass. China probably doesn't care. Well, they do care about the Christians. Isn't there like a massive Christian resurgence right now in China?
Uh, no, that's come down again. Like I think I mentioned it lightly before. There was a Christian sort of a uprising or growth, I guess. Uh, Probably starting about 10 years ago. It's starting to like taper off now, but they had some big thing with the local government. I laughed at it. It was very funny because they had like a Christian church, and the local cops all came in, and you know we're talking China scale here. So the Christian church had something like 200 people, and the local cops had something like 200 people, and this church was probably the size of your normal small town congregation church in the US that might fit 100. So China tried to fit like
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 a
over
parish
200
church.
in there. Yeah, basically. And it was very funny because all the local police wanted to do was tear down the fucking cross because it was like a symbol, right? And all the fucking Christians wanted to do was fucking stop them from tearing down the cross. They were trying to save their fucking cross. It was just some shitty wooden cross. And I laughed at it because literally it wasn't about anything. It wasn't about freedom of religion. It wasn't about being able to practice at this place. It was literally about the fucking cross. So these cops are coming in with the batons and climbing over fences to try and just take down the cross. If they took the cross, if they just took down the cross, they would have been happy. It was like capture the flag. The Chinese Christians were risking their lives, fighting tooth and nail to not let them take this fucking cross. They weren't fighting to, I want the freedom to practice the religion. It wasn't anything about that. It was literally this fucking object. This is when you know you've kind of fucked up and you've done something wrong
Well,
along the
the
lines. They're
argument that
literally
the
about the
American would
physical
have
cross.
is that you let them take the cross and they're gonna take something else out. They're gonna take like the crucifix inside the church. You know what I mean?
Oh, they might if it's a symbol. for sure. But I'm guessing but what I'm saying is that wasn't what was in the minds of the Chinese Christians. They just wanted to keep their fucking cross.
How do you know that? It's like with it's like in America when you have politicians talking about wanting to ban extended magazines or longer or increasing barrel size or some shit. Like you call that a slippery slope. Like they're gonna do this because they want to do this next. Like you don't know for sure that's what.
Oh
they're
yeah, because
thinking or not thinking.
they're worried. Well, yeah, they're worried that if they ban extended magazines, they're going to ban short normal magazines at some stage. I'm pretty sure that the people in that Chinese church weren't just concerned about their physical cross. They didn't have any deeper thought about it.
I don't think
it wasn't.
So.
Oh, they're going to come. They're going to stop us from practicing religion
on this
after
take.
this.
Somebody's saying, "Oh wow, Chinese showing sentimentality, actual human emotions. That's bad. Bad. China can't allow that."
Sorry, what? They're making fun of me?
Yeah, well, because they don't. I also don't buy this. That they're just trying to defend some fucking plywood. That's obviously not what they're doing.
Well, look, there wasn't a ban on it. Okay, so they were there because of symbolism. It wasn't to practice religion. You can practice any religion you want. It was literally they didn't want that cross on the church, on the building. That's what they were there for, that cross. It's not like you can no longer congregate in this building or anything. It's you can practice whatever you want. You can't have that cross sitting on top of that building.
I'm trying to think of a way to talk to people when I call in, but I can't do that with Hangout. And I can't have you use your Discord unless you have like a secondary Discord. You have like a throwaway Discord?
No.
That sucks.
I can make one for the future if you want me on again.
Have people call in because I imagine
if I don't get stoned to death. Yeah, if I don't get stoned to death in this stream.
Well,
for being a Chinese apologist.
Yeah, like I knew
somebody who would absolutely refuse to live in China, an apologist.
But you absolutely refuse
I think it might be just I think it might just be the casual and blasé way I talk about all the shit in China because I'm used to it by now. To me, it's no big thing.
I think people forget that like a billion and a half people live in China, and it's not like utter fucking chaos there. It's not like 1984. I would honestly
no, exactly.
If I had a choice between the United Kingdom and China, I would live in China because with China, you know what the rules are, and like okay, it's cemented. Like this is a part of the Constitution, is that you're not gonna fuck with the party. In England,
basically,
it's like you're free, quote unquote, until they decide that you went one step too far, and you never know where that line is. Like, whereas in China, it's just like you know what the line is. It's there. You know what it is. It's never going to surprise you. If you're doing something that's like counter to the party, like you know it. And I wouldn't want that to be, there's a reason why I choose to live in fucking like really poor countries where nobody's going to fuck with me because they don't have the faculties to.
The means.
Yeah. It's but like I would rather know what the line is than not know what the line is, as far as censorship goes. Which is why
look, there's no doubt in my mind that anyone going to China. Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that anyone going to China as a tourist would have a pretty good time in general. Like it's the same anywhere. It's if you do touristy things, you eat some nice food, blah blah blah. Living there long term, as in like absorbing the culture and stuff, you start to learn some pretty nasty shit that you probably don't want to deal with, and that's essentially me. There's a lot of shit in China that I don't want to deal with. So I don't live there, but I'll happily go there and have fun. I'll happily use its resources.
And like the shit about like if you view one thing that's positive about Taiwan, you'll go to jail. Like it's just not fucking true. Like that's stupid. Do you know how many fucking people would be in prison if they imprisoned literally everyone who read something that's positive about Taiwan? Like it's untenable. You can't put that much of your population in prison. It's you describe it like a slow grind. The shit that they do to censor, to adjust public opinion, is not put everybody in jail who sees material that is contrary to what they want you to believe. It's not 1984.
Yeah.
It's
So
like
so
if you try to do shit that's pro Taiwan, your life becomes extremely uncomfortable as opposed to just killing you, right?
yeah, exactly. They're fairly careful in crossing lines when it comes to their own population. They're more open to exerting hard power when it comes to like the international platform, but domestically they try to one exert soft power, and secondly they try to sweep everything under the rug if they can. They don't want drama, essentially.
Yeah, yeah. That's what you said. Is that they try to avoid bad publicity whenever possible.
Yeah, that is the enemy. Bad publicity is the enemy of propaganda.
Okay, people are asking, are the women in China easy?
Sorry, you cut
Are
off
the
from me
women
there.
in China easy?
Oh, sorry. See, these questions, because it's because China has a very large population. It's very the fucking autist in me is like is just like going crazy right now because it's like you can't use one thing or a handful of things to describe all of China just because it's so massive. Um, I can sort of specify it down. Maybe I think for like a foreigner in China who goes to like the tourist spots and goes to like the tourist bars where those kind of chicks hang out. Yeah, I would say so. But I'm sure you would all know that there's probably like as many or well much more many more sort of more traditional Chinese girls who aren't easy. They don't sleep around. There might be even a few that probably won't fuck until marriage. There's probably still a few of those around too. So um, generally, for a Westerner doing Westerner things, yes, you could probably smash quite easy.
Is well, yeah, as a Westerner, like if people like now I want to sound like a shill. I'm sounding like I'm tempting fucking incels to go to China and try to fuck Chinese women. Uh, like
You
well,
haven't?
specifically with like my concern is like if I'm thinking about women, like I'm thinking about like kids and shit. Like, do mixed race kids get treated like shit in fucking China if they're half white and half Chinese?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Would it okay if you were gonna
There's not a general. The reason why I say that is because some people think they're amazing, like they're attractive children and attractive. They grow up to be attractive adults, and in my opinion, yes, they are. But sometimes they get treated like outsiders. Like you're not really, there's a view that you're not really Chinese, blah blah blah. Um, but once again, it's very hard to like use a single statement to cover all of it because yes and no.
try, trying to make communist Elliot Rogers. Good job, Josh. Well, I mean, is there like? I imagine there must be,
Like if it swayed one way, like anything like 65, 70%, I would say that. But for this particular thing, it's literally in my mind, it's like 50-50. It's like in some places, and it just goes down to the individual. Some think it's great mixed children. Some people think, oh, these guys are still foreigners.
yeah. Well, I was going to ask, like, how xenophobic towards the West is China? Because I don't have a good
Okay,
sense.
so in general, not a lot. They love Westerners. Like you basically Westerners get a free pass for a lot of stuff. There's a lot of perks for being a Westerner in China. Even now that China's become more internationalized, as a Westerner, you go there, people will treat you better in general. It's funny because it even comes down from all the way from the central government. If you're a Westerner, if you want to stay at a hotel, you can't stay at any hotel. You can't stay at the same hotel that Chinese locals have. They have specific hotels where Westerners are allowed to stay. Now, anyone can stay in those hotels, but there are hotels where Westerners cannot stay in. Only Chinese people. So you have to be a certain standard. It's kind of the face that the Chinese government wants to show the world. So if you have a foreign passport, you can only stay in these sort of hotels, like 4 stars or more or whatever.
I mean, is it about wanting to put on a face for the West, or is it wanting to segregate locals from foreigners? Like in the DPRK, they have these Western hotels for tourism, but the main goal about that is trying to limit interaction between the Koreans and Western.
Well, no, because you can literally interact anywhere. You know, it's in fact the majority of interaction is probably not in the hotel where you're in your room. It's probably everywhere else. Two things. So one is they want to put on a good face. The other insidious reason is because they want to listen in on your conversations. So basically the
phone or to China.
No. In China, like your phones are tapped and stuff. In the Western hotels.
Just a heads up for everybody.
But, yeah. and I know, and I'm glad I'm more or less anonymous. Not to like the West. I'm glad I'm more or less anonymous to the Chinese on this. Like probably, but look, what I'm doing is not what I'm saying, and what I'm doing is like a drop in a lake for China. So they probably in general don't care, but like just because I know someone whose job it is to listen to conversations in Western hotels. And it's not everyone. They're targeted. The targets are selective. Obviously, if it's anyone who's a big deal, or anyone who looks, basically it's up to the call of the manager.
All I'm thinking
and
is
it's their job.
It's like you got to find like cucks for this job because you're gonna hear a lot of people fucking.
No. It's not. It's not all cases where the whole apartment is tapped. The phones are tapped.
No, only the phones?
Yeah, only the phones. The phones are all tapped. And in some cases, possibly the apartment.
Well, if the apartment's tapped, it's okay.
Well, no, because it's once again it's China, so it's not some guy or a sweatshop of 50-cent warriors being paid to sit there to listen to everything. They have AI that picks up speech and not anything else. They do it efficiently.
Of course.
So basically, everything gets recorded on a computer. It gets transcribed via AI. And anything that's tagged as, selected gets listened to by a human. And it's funny because the person I know whose job is to do this, they're just like any other fucking schmuck working person, right? I asked them, it's like, so do you like properly listen? And they're like, no, I just go there and just like read a book. It's basically like the security guard that's like asleep in front of the fucking wall of monitors. It's literally like it's funny because at a human level, it's literally like anything else. They're fucking sleeping at the job just as much.
See, chat's saying that it is like 1984 now because everything's listened to. But
well, yeah, I mean it's the same in England.
It is. I would say that's true because fuck England.
Well,
I will never say anything positive about England.
Like China is not the surveillance right now, aside from like the technology, the surveillance infrastructure is not as high as England right now. China's getting there. Like that's the plan. But England is still the most surveilled place in the world.
Poll is this 1984? It's getting close. I would say, it's getting close. I don't think you're not denying that. It's
No. It's yeah, like absolutely. 1984. It's getting there, but at a more, I guess, at a softer level. The infrastructure is there. Policy wise, no, China would not implement 1984 type open policies. They've got to keep their they want a naturalized method of keeping their population happy. They don't want to force it in the end of the day, because unfortunately for the Chinese government, if they force something and the Chinese population isn't happy, that's a bigger army than the government has.
well, it's the saying, if we all spit at our enemy, they will drown. I remember that one. That's one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, that's a Chinese saying. It's like it's sort of a saying on foreign policy. It's like basically, if any country pisses us off, well, with the population of China, if we all spat towards their country, their entire nation will drown.
Sounded very, very smug about that when you laughed.
It's funny. It's clever. It's clever.
Yeah, like Americans, me included, do not like any kind of surveillance, which is why, like America does have the NSA and shit. Like, people don't realize that in the tier 1 networks, the backbones of the internet, like every packet is sniffed by the NSA. They have entire warehouses rented out by Amazon to the CIA, specifically for analyzing automatically, trivial internet matter. Which is why China tries to move as much of its infrastructure within its own borders as possible. It doesn't like to use anything outside the country.
Yeah. Yes, it's more or less the same in the east or the west. I mean, all these things that China is doing are basically they're just copied from west. China's just implementing it their own way, but the ideas behind it are all from the west. They look at the west, 80s, 90s, 2000s. They're like, oh, this is what they're doing. It's actually pretty clever. We'll just implement these, and we'll sell it to a, because while in the West, if the population find out, they might try and overthrow the government. In China, well, I'm sorry, in the West, if the population find out, one, they don't care as much, and they can't do much about it. In China, if there's an uprising, well, the government's fucked.
Well, there was an uprising once. It didn't fucking work out too well.
It. Are you talking about 84?
Was it in 84 or 87? That was 87.
It might have been 84. No, you're right. It is 87. There you go. You know your Chinese history better than I do.
I know. What I learned, what surprised me most about Tiananmen Square was that it was Deng Xiaoping that was the premier at the time. I did not. Well, he wasn't technically the premier. He was never the premier, was he? But he was.
No, he was not.
He was the head honcho. Technically, he was not. He
was. Oh.
Deng Xiaoping was everything except the head of state for his entire duration. He was.
Yeah, so he's the guy that I really like, because he was the guy that basically opened up China to capitalism, which.
To give people a rundown on Deng Xiaoping, because I did read up on him, is in China they do not have like their structure is different. They don't have like the three branches of government, and then the executive branch is in control of all the different departments and shit. In China, they consider each member of the government basically to be equal underneath the Congress and the actually there is no judiciary. The judiciary is a part of the Communist Party directly. And then you have the Congress, which passes laws and shit. But as far as the different organs of government go, they each have their own head. And when the new guy comes in, the powers can be split between the different organs and the different heads. And then there is the head of state, which acts as the foreign policy guy who would travel around. And when Mao Zedong died, he put I think his name was Hua Guangfeng as the head of state. But Deng Xiaoping got every organ of government besides head of state. So he technically had all the power, even though he wasn't the head of state. Xi Jinping is all the powers plus head of state, which is why he's called the premier. And although Deng Xiaoping was never the premier, he did have significant power. And he converted China from an agrarian society to an industrial society. But he was also the guy holding all the reins when the Tiananmen Square stuff happened. That's my rundown of the government. Hope I was correct. Because I need my 5 cents.
Yeah, yeah. I'm actually not sure who was in charge during the Tiananmen Square.
It was Deng Xiaoping. I don't know who the head of state was, but it was Deng Xiaoping was the one who said, "Squish all those niggas, squish them all."
So he was the chairman of the Central Military Commission. He was chairman of Central Advisory Commission to the end of 1987. He was a lot of things at that time. Yeah, you're right. He was the main head honcho. The thing with Deng Xiaoping was that he was never well liked in the party because of the fact that he wanted to open up China to the West and open it up to the capitalist ideals. White cat, black cat, it doesn't matter as long as it catch mice, sort of a thing. So he wasn't well liked. He was very ostracized for a long time before the party sort of accepted him. And look, personally, I like the guy. He opened up China to capitalism, and I fucking love capitalism. It is it is utterly fucking grand. So, I visited his golden statue in Shenzhen.
Deng Xiaoping has a golden statue.
Yeah, they built a big golden statue of him on top of a mountain. It's a pleasant walk. It's nice. And it looks over Hong Kong.
I don't know. People are calling me like a useful idiot. Like I was trying to give people a different view in China, because when people talk about China, like they have no fucking clue, and it's strange.
Yeah, I mean, it's understandable because they have a very most of them probably have a hard on for a particular way that China is. And unfortunately for them, China just moves too fast for them to comprehend. It's vastly different to what they have in mind. The fact is fact. And at the end of the day, regardless of if they call me an apologist, call you a shill, whatever, right? The truth is still the truth. Like there's an objective truth to everything.
Oh yeah, and it is like Russia. Like people have this idea of what Russia and the Eastern Bloc is. Like it's very pleasant in the Eastern Bloc. It's very poor, but it's very tidy and clean, and the people are a lot nicer. They're not running around in fucking Adidas tracksuits throwing bottles of vodka at each other and just like squatting all over the place. Like they do squat. That is true.
And the thing is, a lot of places are still like that in Russia, and similarly with China. A lot of people are still like everything that these people, the listeners, are thinking of. Every bad thing probably still happens at some place in China. But as a general trend, as a general overview of what China is, it's not that at all.
Don't get your friend re-educated. Well, you're pretty much done with going to China for the meantime, right?
Me? No, I actually want to go to China and like I said, I've been since 2015, and the China that I went to in 2015 will be vastly different to the China that I visit now or next year, which is my plan. It's actually kind of scary and daunting for me because everything is different. Like robots fucking serve people in restaurants. You know, like everything is cooked by robots in China. Everything is served by robots. It's kind of going to be kind of weird. People are going to give me like the evil eye for trying to pay in cash now. And that's a bit daunting because in 2015 it was still just the normal China. It was a similar China for the last 10 years, and then back in 2016, it just did this massive fucking jump into advanced technology, and you know, startups became sexy, and now China's kind of fucking foreign to me as well.
Bullshit. Most of
But
China is so rural.
I'll be
Like,
going mid
yeah,
next year
a
probably.
lot of China is still fucking rural, especially to the west. Like nobody said otherwise. Like if you leave the cities and go to fucking
Oh
Xinjiang,
yeah,
like yeah, you're going to be in absolute Africa tier
in
poverty, basically.
houses made of sticks and shit. You know.
But the middle class in China, like there's 100 million people in the Chinese middle class. It's a
I
massive.
would say there's probably more.
Well, oh, not middle class. I meant like millionaires, people who have a net worth of like 100 million or
Oh yeah, yeah. There's like 100. Yeah, there's like 100 million millionaires or some shit.
the the number of people, like the distribution of wealth, ironically, is in the actual middle class. It's a lot fairer than it is in even the United States. And you have all these people who have $1 million, money to fuck around with, who are doing crazy shit. And if you're looking at why China has grown so well, it's because they do have a middle class. The United States does not have a middle class. It has people who are too fucking poor to do anything, who survive off the government, who continually vote for more Gibbs. You have a struggling middle class, which is falling to shit. And then you have like the wealthy. And on
Yeah, you
top of that,
basically
you have
have
the
everyone
ultra
who
wealthy.
believes in trickle down economics. So you basically have everyone who believes in trickle down economics, and then you have the people at the top who are doing the limited trickling.
Well, in China, they literally redistribute wealth.
Yes, yes, they do. You know, for better or for worse, whether you like it or not, it is what it is. It is what they do.
I'm not making an argument for
Um,
socialism. I'm just saying that's the reality. The reality of it is that being an American fucking sucks. And in China, yeah, you're gonna have to sex and party dick, but your odds of having a financially beneficial life if you're a part of the East Coast is probably higher than it is in the U.S.
Yeah, that's what we sort of didn't finish talking about before. Is that as somebody who basically toes the party line, you're going to live a pretty comfortable life, and this is why most people like that social scoring system. Because for most people who just live a normal life, it's very easy to score highly, and it's very easily to reap the benefits. You know,
Yeah,
so this is why they're very comfortable and openly comfortable about it. It's the people who who basically um, criticize the government, and you know, there's a lot of stuff for them to criticize about, you know, human rights issues, all sorts of like fair and equity issues as well. But the people who openly do this, they get terrible social scores. So, and you know, most people aren't protesters. Most people are just working middle class, and they live very comfortable lives. They get extra benefits for having a higher social score. And I think what's bothering a lot of listeners is that I talk about this in a very casual term. Um, you know, I'm not saying this with any sort of disgust or spite or anything. And I guess it's because I'm just used to it. Like it is what it is. You know, I
are
have
there
my
organ
personal opinions.
harvesting prisons? There must be.
Yes, yes, there is.
So that
In
would
fact, I think most of them are basically if a you know, if a prisoner is on death row and they've been given the death sentence, more than likely their organs will be harvested.
oh, after they die, don't they just get shot?
No.
I'm pretty sure they like because somebody
Um,
said I was reading a story.
sometimes.
There was an American living in China. They would hear like fireworks, and then they discovered that they were living very close to a prison, and they were probably just hearing people get shot.
Um, probably used to be the case. I think the shootings are decreasing in number because it's because of ironically health and safety laws, because the cleanup is kind of a pain in the ass, so they prefer to just like inject them. Obviously they're not in sterile hospital bed conditions. They probably just still line them up, but instead of shooting them in the head, they'll just give them an injection in the neck.
Well, you can't harvest
Just
organs
because
from a person you've injected lethal chemicals into. You can blow their brains out and then
depends
take
what
the
you
organs.
depends what you inject.
No.
Depends
You
what you
can't put
inject, I
chemicals in
suppose.
somebody then take their liver. That doesn't work. You gotta pop them. This is how
I
I
guess I
see
don't
it.
know. I guess I don't know enough. Yeah, I guess I don't know enough about how lethal injections work. I guess it depends which organ they're after, because I know lethal injection disables certain organs, right?
Yeah, no, it's exactly what it does. That's how it kills you. Is it fucks up your internal organs and shit. You can't take kidneys and livers from somebody who's
Yeah.
you've pumped full of chemicals. You just gotta blow their
Does it
brains
does
out.
it disable every? I guess if it yeah. I mean, okay, if it disables every organ, then no, you can't. You yeah.
Yeah, no,
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. But in general, yes, they do harvest organs, and they'll find a way
Well, here's my
to
question
kill
then.
the
Okay,
person off and
people
harvest
are
their organs.
ranting and raving about this. Shouldn't we execute more people in the U.S. and shouldn't we harvest them for everything they're fucking worth? Like honestly, like we have a serious fucking criminal issue here. Like I see nothing wrong with executing pedophiles and taking their organs. Like
Um,
you stole little Susie's virginity. We're gonna fucking take your heart. I'm sorry. Like that's just the trade.
well, it's one thing to think a certain way in our personal opinions, but what's palatable to the public is something different, especially in the West, where public opinion seems very cared about, I suppose. For my personal opinion on it is that yeah, there are definitely logical reasons for harvesting organs of criminals, right? Uh, does it contravene a bunch of human rights? I guess it does. It probably does.
People want my
Um,
liver. And they can't have my liver. My liver is too pure for you fucking
you
alcoholics.
know, um, like my personal opinion is that yeah, there is a good argument to harvesting criminal organs. And yes, it does
I think
contravene
the big
human
complaint though is that
rights
the
law.
people being executed are probably like political dissidents as opposed to pedophiles.
Um, it, it could be anything. They just could be like um,
Oh, drugs are probably
drug
the big one.
traffickers, could
Yeah.
be sex traffickers. They could be drug traffickers, sex traffickers. People tend not to get killed, by the way, for political dissidents. They tend to just get locked away and shoot out of the public, or they get or like that ink girl that disappeared. She's in a hospital somewhere, being treated for mental illness in quotation marks.
What ink girl?
There was a girl who made a social media post throwing ink on a poster of Xi Jinping and said,
What an
I
asshole.
dare you to come take me away. Yeah, I dare you to do something about it. And then, like, within like a couple of hours, she posted up like this photo or this video of her filming through her keyhole of like two uniformed and one ununiformed policeman knocking on her door, and basically she disappeared, and she was radio silence from that evening onwards. A couple of months later, they found her in a hospital, being treated for mental illness somewhere. But journalists who came to the hospital to look for her, the hospital told them that she wasn't there, but her family said she was.
We that was a
Yeah,
Soviet thing actually, is that they would treat people for this kind of made up schizophrenia, uh, or
yeah.
political dissident.
It's basically just brush them out of the way, I suppose. Yeah. Just to keep them out of the way. I mean, you just look up Ink Girl or Ink Girl China on Google, and you'll find all sorts of shit about her.
Wait, when did they arrest the CEO of Alibaba? That didn't fucking happen.
No, CEO of
CEO of
CEO of
Alibaba is
Alibaba. Isn't
my
that like Jack Ma?
yeah.
Yeah, everyone loves Jack Ma. He holds the people's money in his trust. No,
What's
it was
what's
the,
the search engine
daughter of
guy?
the daughter of the CEO of Huawei recently, like literally like 3 days ago, they arrested her in Canada. She filed a court order to suppress the reason she was arrested, so media can't say, and they haven't released it. But I think US is looking to extradite, and China is really pissed off and saying that this hurts Chinese-Canadian relations.
Well, they better not fuck around with that because China's
But
going
yeah,
to take.
this is current news, so it's probably worth following in the next couple of days because I'm pretty sure shit's gonna happen. Because yeah, this is like a big deal.
China owns like all the houses in Canada. I don't think there's a single Canadian landlord in the country.
That's right. Like within a matter of like 10 years, the housing prices went up by tenfold. So
Anything else? I'm curious. Uh, Anybody got for other questions? Symbols don't matter, but don't you dare desecrate the picture of our glorious leader. Well, the clear difference between the crucifix and the picture of Xi Jinping is that Xi Jinping is a living guy, and he's very image conscious.
a living god.
No, not God. He's a guy. Unless you're making a joke, but you better be fucking careful about calling Xi Jinping a god. They're gonna fucking take you seriously for that.
Really?
Ask about the Chinese real estate bubble and buying concrete shell apartments. We already talked about that. Well, we didn't talk about the real estate bubble, I guess.
Okay, so simply put, you can't sustain entire cities of empty houses, right? So the government has put in policy to limit house ownership from now on, so that it doesn't work retrospectively. But now it's like each individual can only own like one house or two houses or something like that. The on-flow effect of that is that people who own like rich motherfuckers who own like 10 houses are starting to become scared, so they're starting to try and sell their houses. Now China's put in other economic policy to slow down because they realize it's a bubble. For sure it's a fucking bubble. So China's put in policy to sort of like a gradual slope down out of this bubble. So far the bubble hasn't popped, and my personal opinion is that it's because of the strong culture of ownership in China, of owning a house, it's unlikely to pop. And the fact that China's sort of releasing air out of the bubble slowly, definitely it does help. You gotta understand, like the Chinese economists meticulously plan everything. This is one of those things that the West doesn't quite sort of comprehend, is that while Western free markets allowed it to grow, to have basically huge free growth in the capitalist system, which I love, China's pretty much had a completely meticulously planned economy growth.
Well, it's not
And if
always
they
worked
can
out. Is the problem.
it's worked out overall. I mean,
The four
are
tragedies
you referring to
disagree.
something, or
I mean, there are serious issues with
which
a planned
four?
system. The four tragedies, the fucking the famine.
Back, yeah. No, so I'm talking about sort of modern China after Deng Xiaoping came into power. When they adopted a semi-capitalist, socio-capitalist system, I guess. The famine one was kind of funny. A bunch of people, like a large portion of Chinese people. I shouldn't say that's funny, but basically because Lenin made a sideways remark to Mao about China owing a debt to Russia, and then Mao was triggered, and he basically said, "We're going to pay off the debt in 2 years," and this was like around 1952, 53. And he decided to pay off all of China's debt within like a short amount, and a bunch of people starved. This is when everyone was like melting their pots and pans at home to contribute to the cause in metals. But in the end, they didn't realize they were melting just pig iron, and it was like pretty much valueless. But yeah, lots of people starved
My favorite
during
thing
that
about
period
that, and
because of a snide
people are
remark.
saying that the CPC does not even deny the famine anymore. Like the official party
Yeah,
line is that poor central planning contributed to the famine during the Great Leap Forward. Like that's not even denied. Party.
yeah. I don't know if they ever did. I
I
don't know
think
if I
no,
was
they
alive
definitely
for
did
any
at some
point where
point.
they did, but
But
probably. I mean, it wouldn't surprise
my
me.
favorite thing about that though is the story of how Mao Zedong declared like 4 pests, and one of them was the sparrow, and
Oh yeah,
the sparrow ate seeds and it ate insects, but because it
yeah.
ate
It
seeds,
hindered agriculture
yeah,
because it ate seeds from crops.
it was very useful for removing pests and for spreading seeds. So Mao Zedong declared the sparrow to be a pest, and the Chinese would literally chase the sparrow around with pots and pans, forcing it out of trees and stuff until it would literally fall out of the sky and die of exhaustion. And the Swiss reported during this at the embassy that the sparrows would all hide in the Swiss embassy's trees, like hundreds of them, because it was the only place the Chinese couldn't get to with the pots and pans and kill the sparrows. So that was a huge factor in the famines.
Yeah, a lot of weird shit happened in those times. Literally just because Lenin made a snide remark about Mao and his ability to pay. But to finish off the real estate thing, so China's sort of doing a gradual slope to slow down the bubble, trying to prevent it from bursting. Now, obviously, because of the policy of people owning only a limited number of houses and stuff, there is, people are selling out the houses and trying to move their money overseas because having your money in China is kind of insecure because literally the government can do whatever they want with it. Technically, it's the same in the US and in Australia. The government can just take your money in the bank. There are laws just to allow that. But in China, they're just more likely to exercise it, I guess, in truth. And so people are sort of there's a mass exodus of wealth out of China now for the last probably seven years, I'd say. And the government has put a control on that. So now any individual in China can only move money outwardly at a rate of 50,000 US per year per person. So that there is a policy there of wealth exodus in China. It is literally 50,000 US per year per person. That's a little known fact.
Well, it's even WhatsApp limits the amount that you could send people, like when they're
Oh no, we're not talking about a platform. We're talking about just literal federal state
yeah, but there's also a limit between
yeah,
how much you can send between people.
in WhatsApp.
Yes.
Do you mean, or what do you
Like you
mean?
can only send like up to like $100,000 per year.
That's like a WhatsApp policy, right?
I don't know if it's a policy or a thing that the government did.
The government of China.
What other government? Yeah, I've just said there's a hard
I don't know,
limit.
I don't know what's WhatsApp got to do with China.
Oh, not WhatsApp, fucking WeChat. Sorry, I mix it up all the fucking time. I'm sorry.
Oh, WeChat. I don't know. I'm sure there is a limit in WeChat. I'm not sure it's to do with the exodus of funding. A lot of it would be if you're trying to move it overseas and stuff. But a lot of it probably is to do with tax as well, I would say. As in, if you're over a certain, if you're moving over a certain amount of money, that means you have that much money to move. That means you should be over a certain tax threshold.
Somebody is talking about the banking. This guy called Robert Smith in chat. He is ranting. He's been ranting for fucking 15 minutes about this shadow banking system, like fucking muttering it to himself like a fucking lunatic. And it's like, ask a question. What, do you know anything about a shadow banking system? Because this guy is about to eat his fucking arms in frustration.
Okay, literally, the shadow banking system is basically just the non-official banking system. Every country has it. It's basically, you could call it. It's basically the loan sharks. There's not some other, there's not some other fucking Bitcoin-based system. No, it's literally just talking about, like financial systems that are not recorded officially.
So, I mean, is that like Bitcoin or what?
It could be anything. It's just anything that's not centrally controlled by the government. Like shadow banking could be if I were a millionaire and you were like some big real estate developer, and I loan you, $100 million at 10% interest or whatever, and you give that to me. Obviously, the government doesn't touch any of that. That's basically the shadow banking. That's shadow banking. It's just big organized financial, well, not necessarily big, but just well organized financial institutions that do finance stuff, but is independent of the official.
It's just like a black market, but with money, is what you're saying.
Literally, yeah. That's literally what it is.
Yeah, that doesn't. I mean, well, I'm confused.
It's
with
nothing.
The,
it's nothing significant or particular to China.
Really, every country has it except in China. The local governments borrow from it to fund huge developments. Well, I guess that's just like
Yes, that's true.
corruption. Is that what would be
Yeah,
considered corruption?
It's like if you can't. It's like it's not quite corruption. It's definitely not it's not above board. It's basically when local governments can't get a certain amount of funding from the central government, they'll go through the shadow banking system with the permission of the central government, sort of a thing.
It kind of reminds, like, the way it's described is like the Yakuza. I'm just confused, like what in particular you want to hear about, because it's
yeah, the shadow banking system is nothing interesting or different to however it operates in the West. It's nothing particular to China, other than as you said, governments are willing to do business with the shadow banking system, which is essentially just an unrecorded financial system.
He says it's as big as the actual banking system, but I mean, I guess it would be wise not to keep money in the Chinese banks.
Yeah,
just,
like
just how it sounds to me. Like, I would want to keep my money in fucking bags of rice over the Chinese bank.
Gold bars or something. Yeah, like, and obviously with the shadow banking system, there's no guarantee there either. And it might be as big as the actual system. Probably, I wouldn't be surprised, but because it's kind of unrecorded, I don't think anyone really has any idea. But yeah, like it's I mean, I get what you're saying, but it's not particularly interesting. It's kind of old news, I guess.
It just sounds like what would be a natural consequence of very large government. I think what they're hinting at is people are speculating that China is going to collapse at some point in the near future, like not in the distant future, but in the near future. And I don't think it is. Like, the main idea that they have is that once Trump fixes America, and once we stop importing goods from China, the Chinese economy is going to completely and totally collapse because it's propped up by the U.S. And that seems to be the main theory.
That sounds very conspiracy theory like. We live in an internationalized system. Yes, a majority of stuff Chinese exports does go to US, but also it's because Chinese has been focusing on the US for the last 20 years. Recently, because of the trade wars, China has changed its focus to other countries and also propping up a strong domestic market. For many reasons, which I won't bother to list because they're detailed and small and numerous. I highly doubt China's going to collapse anytime soon.
The argument is that China provides no necessary exports that people would need, that they can't get elsewhere, that they couldn't make domestically.
Yeah, true. But it's the logic isn't a slippery slope where because they don't make anything necessary, they're gonna fail. That's a bit of a slippery slope that you can't you can't really make.
Well, in a situation where, let's say that overnight, because apparently Trump recently strong armed China into accepting some kind of trade deal they were reluctant to do at first. If there were a
Do you know what
situation,
it is?
hmm? You cut out again.
I don't know. Can someone link it
It's,
to?
it's not it's not particularly relevant. It's just as a hypothetical. If the
Yeah.
United States were to replace all of its Chinese imports, like overnight, what would China do to fix that? To stabilize its economy?
Nothing. It would be fucking mayhem if overnight all the imports stopped.
Well, okay, even if it wasn't overnight, let's say that Trump put out a 4-year plan to do this. What would China do to correct the problem?
Oh well, it's already taking steps to do that by having stronger economic ties with many other, especially developing countries. Developing countries need a lot of shit. Countries with that previously had no middle class, but with a growing middle class, they're very hungry. Places like Africa, places like South America, they fucking love Chinese goods, as does the US. Um, and so, China recently has been making stronger ties. You had the American trade group, whatever that was called. I was reading about it the other day, but China's like made its own. With Brazil and all those other countries, some acronym. The US had one with its acronym. The China had its own with its acronym. Um, and there's like APAC as well, and basically they're just big trading blocks that get created. And what China's doing that to I guess to enforce itself against the US trade war is that it's forming closer ties and trade blocks with other nations. That's its plan of softening any sort of US pushback. Like if it happened overnight, yeah, like shit would crash. Um, in not only in China because everything's so well linked, shit in the entire world will crash. Um, but obviously, it's not going to happen overnight.
So it's just in
There
general.
was there was that recent article I was reading that I think the US obviously it either started taxing or banned. No, China started limiting pork imports from the US. So it started limiting American pork, which dealt a big blow to the farmers. But obviously, the American government, who's having a trade war at the moment, to soften that, promised the American pig farmers that the government would buy a certain amount of pork, a certain tonnage of pork per year from the farmers in order to soften that blow. I actually don't understand how that system works. Like, what does the government do with all that pork? Probably subsidizes it somewhere else or something like that. But the irony was that one of the major pork companies was owned by a Chinese company. So essentially, the government was buying pork from an American company that was owned by a Chinese company, and they were doing it because China banned uh, pork imports.
Uh, well, let's. I mentioned that story from the guy from Pole, like way back when I first started talking, and that's his whole thing was don't go to China, don't do business in China because they will implement whatever tricks they can to try and fuck you over.
You have to be one, a shrewd businessman to be able to successfully do business in China, and secondly, the way to do business in China is very different to the West. It took Coca-Cola 10 years to learn that. Like Coca-Cola was in China 10 years before they even had an actual presence, like an out-facing retail presence in China. Coke was doing stuff in China for like 10 years. They were learning how it works, how doing business in China works. It's not underscored by contracts and agreements and law and stuff like that. It's just a very different climate to do business.
All right, somebody's been begging me to ask you about pollution. What is the pollution situation in China?
Okay, so I think it's called PMT or something. What is that? The measurement.
Oh, pounds per
the
mil or something?
no. It's let me look it up. Pollution measurement unit. It's measure of air quality. I think it's just called PM. Yeah, it's PM levels, which measures air quality. So, my experience with it starts back in the 2008 Beijing Olympics when Beijing being a city that's surrounded by basically industrial factories is constantly the skies are gray, brown. Having 1 out of 10 days might be a blue sky sort of a thing. What China did 2 weeks before the Olympics was like while China doesn't have this is back in 2008 we're talking about. So while China didn't have the awareness of being environmentally aware as it does kind of today, in 2008, what they did have was political power. And what they did 2 weeks before the opening ceremony of the Olympics was basically ban cars from driving on the Beijing roads. They have massive political power to do shit like that. Okay, so when the opening ceremony happened, when they were on the international stage, Beijing looked really clean. Now what they've done was, because there's a huge number of cars, they limit. So if you live in Beijing, right, it depends on what the last number of your number plate is. If it's an odd number, you can take it out on Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, sort of a thing. If it's an even number, you can take it out on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Sundays are free for all. So that's how they limit the number of cars on the road. So depending on what license plate your car is, you can only take it out on certain days. Probably a little known fact.
In Beijing,
in terms of pollution, just in Beijing, because it's overcrowded. Which Beijing's probably a place with probably the worst air quality as well. It's basically, when people talk about the pollution issue in China, they're talking about Beijing because it's the only place with that issue. Like other major cities like Shanghai, Guangdong, and stuff, they're fine. They're nice and clean. Shanghai is very, very westernized. So it's basically just Beijing, the old political capital. What they've done now was that they've, probably for the last 5 years, and when they become more environmentally aware, they have tried to put in controls to limit the number of the PM levels in the air. They've limited the amount of work that the factory's done. They've limited the amount of like pollutants that factories can release. So I think just only within the last year, it's starting to subside a little bit, but it's still awful. Like you get days where they recommend you not go outside. The PM levels, when it's a bad day, it's like 100 times more than what the safe level is.
That's
like
a
we're
lot.
not talking like we're not talking about just over or anything like that. On a bad
Somebody's
day
saying
in
that there are
Beijing,
multiple major cities in China that are in the top 10 most polluted cities on the planet.
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I think that takes average PM levels per year or something like that. So if I'm looking at the real time real time air pollution quality index right now, it's 65, which is moderate in Beijing. Over the past 48 hours, the minimum is 13, the maximum is 151. It's PM 2.5, PM 10, which is a different particle, 17 to 192. Like, I'm not sure what these numbers mean either, but you can just take it as a general min max. If I were to I'll just compare it to, say, what's a good American city to compare it to? San Fran?
Well, like a giant shitty dump, the LA.
No. I mean, like an average decent U.S. city.
Oh no, San Francisco is also a shitty dump. Um,
Like, I just want to compare PM level so I can sort of anchor.
Like a
It's currently in Beijing at
mid-sized city?
65.
I don't even know. Probably something like Buffalo. Buffalo would probably be an American city.
All right. PM levels, Buffalo, New York.
Or Seattle, Memphis.
Okay, so Buffalo at the moment is good at 39. Beijing right now is moderate at 65. So Buffalo, minimum 28, maximum 60 for the last 48 hours. And this is where you get the funny thing in Beijing. For the last 48 hours, minimum 13, maximum 151. So it
Holy
fluctuates
fuck.
a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that
So,
like
like I
because
said,
of
on
wind blowing
bad days,
shit in from a different city or what?
yeah, it's basically Beijing's kind of surrounded by factories and industry. So on a bad day, depending on the weather and the wind, you'll get all sorts of shit being blown in. The government will come out with like safety announcements, PSA saying you should stay indoors. Everyone around
Is that
wears
when
masks.
people wear masks and shit on the subway?
Yeah.
So like do they have a plan to repair air pollution or like in the long run or
Yeah, like I said, they have a strategy to basically, the general strategy is to just reduce air pollution, have less sort of like coal burning and more, renewables and stuff like second to Germany. Like China is one of the leading sort of like investors in renewables domestically. It's got all sorts of like solar powered shit and energy efficient crap. Like you go to even the small towns and stuff, and all the street lights are all solar wind powered. They have a really cool design, which is just a pole with a light on it, and on top there's a solar panel, and underneath there's like a little wind turbine. It's both. I don't know if it's connected to the grid, but it's it's a pretty common sight in China. All the street lamps are solar/wind powered. They can just manufacture and produce this shit.
Well, at least in the big cities they are. In the rural towns you don't have shit.
No. In the rural towns, this is what they have. In the big cities, they have to like care about urban planning and aesthetics and stuff. It's in the rural towns that they have this, because they
They
don't
have the
need to
fancy
care about the fact that
windmill
these things
solar
look.
panels.
Yeah, these aren't fancy. They're just street lamps with a solar panel and a wind fan turbine thing. The blades on it. I mean, I guess we call them fancy in Australia and the US because these aren't so like prevalent. But yeah, they're literally everywhere in China.
Chat's very skeptical about solar panel. they don't like solar panel. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm just telling you what's in China, what I see. So
Okay, they're begging me to read you this article about fake moons. About how have you heard of this?
No.
They're saying that China is so polluted that the government is planning to replace streetlights with fake moons. I'll put this up. Okay, this is the aha. Gotcha.
Where have you pasted it?
Hangouts. Okay, so I'll bring it up on the thing. Chinese cities plan to launch artificial moon to replace streetlights. Dust-like glow, a proposed satellite, could light an area with a diameter of 10 to 80 kilometers, people daily report. In Chengdu, there is a reportedly an ambitious plan afoot for replacing the city's streetlights, boosting the glow of a real moon with that of a more powerful fake one.
So they're going to send like a satellite that basically floats over China to provide light, replacing street lamps. Is that the idea?
That's what it sounds like. It doesn't sound like anything having to do with pollution. I don't know why they said that was like a pollution thing.
I haven't heard this before, but that actually sounds kind of fucking cool.
You could make it so that it broadcasts like a picture of Xi Jinping to replace them.
Yeah. He's now the man in the moon. His face is just gonna be carved on the fucking thing. No, but that sounds fucking ultra sci-fi sci-fi and kind of ultra cool. Like, and you know, to comment on what I think people might be thinking about is some insidious plan to trick people into thinking there's a. I mean, obviously, no one's gonna think that it's a real moon. It's probably literally just China's ambitious plan to control the environment they live in. I mean, I personally, I think that's kind of fucking cool. If I could launch a satellite, to replace the moon for nights when there is no moon, and I just want a nice looking moon, isn't? I mean, that's cool. I like the idea. Um, I'm not sure if there's anything particularly insidious about it or anything to do with pollution. Um, you know, like regardless of whether it's a moon or a fake moon, if you the amount of pollution that's in the Beijing skies when it's bad, it covers everything. Forget about the moon. You can't even see. You can't even see 20 feet ahead of you. So I doubt a fake moon's going to make them forget about the situation they're fucking in. But with that said, as a separate idea, I think having a satellite launched to replace a moon is fucking amazing.
It's like you're trolling them.
So,
They're mad about like the environmental destruction right now, which I guess is fair because the Chinese don't really seem to care about the environment too much.
not traditionally. So when China was a developing country, so this is another big topic, but TLDR, traditionally in the Industrial Revolution of the West, the West was very pollutant. They destroyed entire ecosystems with their coal burning and stuff like that. But now they're all first world, so they can do things like energy efficiency, stuff like that. It's a little bit unfair to say to developing countries like South America, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's a little bit unfair to say to like Brazil, hey, you can't be doing this like developing country shit where you take shit out of the ground, burn it. It's unfair to say to India and China and places of developing Europe that, hey, while we did this in the 30s and stuff, and we polluted everything, now we're first world, you can't do the same. We don't want you to use these methods to sort of become a developed country. It's kind of unfair to say that. Now, I'm not saying that it's bad that we're telling them to not pollute, but they don't have the means to like, have energy efficient renewable systems. They kind of have to use coal because coal is kind of cheap, So it's a little bit unfair to say that they can't. Not that it's not a good thing.
They're producing far more pollution than we did at our peak, but they have way more fucking people than we did during the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah. Look, everything you kind of have to get an accurate measure, you kind of have to measure per capita. Now, as carbon footprint per capita, Australia is actually one of the biggest. By the way, this environmentalist, environment loving country is actually one of the biggest carbon footprints per capita, just because we live in big spaces. We are a rich country. We consume a lot, and we throw away a lot. China is actually one of the lower ones if you look at per capita. If you look at just carbon footprint per capita, and in the last probably 5-7 years, China has, like many other countries, China, has openly stated that yes, there is a global warming issue, and they're putting in strategy and policy to, I guess, help ease that.
Are you aware that there is a synagogue in Beijing?
The synagogue is everywhere.
What is Xi Jinping going to do about that? The imminent threat.
Nothing. He doesn't care about religion. Like from a government point of view, religion doesn't really exist. So they'll probably just look at it as with any other church, and just if you basically, you can do whatever the fucked up thing you want. If you start disrupting society, or if you start disrupting or putting a bad look on the government, then we're going to do something bad. Otherwise, go nuts.
So they're not going to shut down the synagogue?
they might try and take its cross or its fucking.
It's Star of David.
Yeah, they might try and do that. There's not that many Jews in China.
There's actually a website called synagogue.org that is about the Chinese synagogue, which I find funny. It's like it's such a prominent domain name that's dedicated to this Jewish clique that's still in Beijing.
I wonder what the population of that is, because
Probably not very little.
I think so. Yeah.
Anything else? The K Feng people are all Jewish Chinese. Heard of the K Feng?
Yes, I have. Yes, there's a group of, I guess, like many generations ago, there were a bunch of Jews that came to China, and I mean they all look Chinese and stuff, but technically they originate from Jewish roots, and they live in a particular part of China, and they have their own language. I think look very. I know very little about it because it's not like a well-known thing. It's probably a very one of those particular things that's not very well known about. What's that word I'm looking for?
Obscure?
Yeah, obscure.
I don't know.
Like
Chat's
people
very concerned
don't know about it.
future
People
of,
don't care about it.
People are very concerned about the future of China if they don't deal with the K Feng menace immediately.
I don't think the Kaifeng menace has anything on the power of the Chinese central government.
Maybe they can share a cell with the Uyghurs. Maybe they can share a cell with the Uyghurs.
Maybe they could. I mean, when they start,
I'm not too worried about the religious influence. Like people, like I'm vaguely aware that South Korea in particular, has had serious issues with influencers from outside the country fucking with the country. But like after World War II in particular, with the Japanese trying to conquer basically all China, like China, I think it's even written into the Constitution that only the Chinese can rule over China. Like you can't be a politician in China unless you're Chinese. I have if you want to talk, this is the thing that gets me. Like I said yesterday that all authoritarianism is bad to me. I do not like authoritarianism. I don't care if it's far right or far left. I don't care if it's communist. I don't care if it's like fascist, because censorship is like it'll always bite you in the ass. It's just anybody who likes to speak their mind. And
yeah, unless you are the authority, obviously.
Yeah, but it's like
I'm in agreement. But that's my one caveat, is that unless I'm the actual authoritarian.
Well, that's a very chinky thing of you to say, motherfucker.
It is indeed. It is indeed.
But I was just gonna say it's written into their constitution that only the Chinese can rule China, and I'm not for censorship at all, and I'm not worried for the Chinese in terms of having outside influence take over the. It's just not gonna happen. I don't think.
Yeah. No. Like even on a commercial basis, it's very difficult. The government will always have its fat little fingers in the pot somewhere. Like the policy for foreign investment is you have to be partnered with a local company to do any business in China. Another little known fact: you can't just go to China and establish, like Coca-Cola LLC or whatever. You have to be partnered up with a local Chinese company to do anything.
Yeah. Oh, they have to own like 50% of it, right?
Yes. Minimum 50% of the company. And that basically, I mean, 50% in a Western sense, it means you have equal power. In China, no. 50% means that 50%, but the Chinese government gets to tell you what to do.
Okay. So there's that. So, the people are calling you a shill. I just don't. I don't get it. It's like he's not shilling. He's not saying go spend all your money in China, forgive China for all its sins. It's like these are the sins. These are the things that they do that decrease
Yeah,
enjoyment of
yeah. I
freedom
think
in the
it's the
country.
very yeah. I think it's the very nonchalant way that I describe China. I'm not saying, "Oh, this is atrocious." It's probably the very neutral language I use. While neutral, when the listeners are bent a certain way, anything to the other side, to one side of it, would sound against them. But you know, uh, China, of course, has its good and its bad, and that's the truth of it. It's a very big country. Um, you can sort of get a measure of what my opinion on it is by the fact that I'm not living in there, and I would like to avoid doing business in there. So you can sort of get an idea of my overall feeling on it. But because it's so big, there's definitely a lot of profit to be had, lots of advantage to be taken in China. Like I'm happy it exists, um, and just as with anything in life, take what you can from it, and avoid the bad parts. Right?
Is China better than the West?
um, Seriously, stupid question because you need to be specific in what metric we're using.
In what metric? I don't. Well, I suppose if we're going by where you would prefer to live, like your answer is obvious because you don't live in
Yeah,
China.
yeah, exactly. And I would refuse to live in China long term, at least for the time being. Look, in to be honest, and my entire life, I've always thought that living in the West is better. And it's only in probably the last 2 years, from what I've seen in China, that I'm starting to think, and obviously I'm not even considering it at this stage, but just as a thought project, looking at it on the surface of it, China's becoming a more easier place to live for a more or less Westerner or a Western orientated person like me. An interesting thing about, at least on the ground level, on an individual level, the service industry far exceeds that of the West. Um, things like delivery meals and stuff like that, 24 hours, 24/7, you can get anything you want. If you went to a restaurant on the other side of town, and you left your bottle of wine at home, you can basically, for like $20, you can get someone to like deliver it to you for like, within like half an hour. They'll come to your place, and somebody else in your place will give it to them, or if you've got one of those like high tech phone controlled locks, you can open it up and they come and get it for you. Everything will be recorded on their cam. If you left your purse or your bike helmet or something at the restaurant, and now you're home and it's 1 a.m., you can basically order a service that goes and gets your helmet. The hospitality and service industry is very mature in China now compared to the West, like vastly exceeds that of the West.
Well, the biggest thing,
Probably because labor is so cheap.
well, yeah. Well, when you talk about that, like even here, like it's very hard in the Eastern Bloc to get shit done. Like it's a struggle. Like everything is fucking annoying. And that was my biggest problem in the Philippines is that everything was so fucking annoying. Everything
Mm.
was too complicated, and like I don't know. Like again, I'm not defending China. I'm just saying that in terms of like of convenience factor, like that shit, China does a lot of things right for one. So like
Yeah, yeah. And there is a sort of an insidious background to it. Okay, they make living very comfortable, but that it's very hard to step out of line. Once again, it's carrot and the stick. They make the carrot so big and the stick so big that it's just, even logically, it's almost like it's stupid to want to do something different. You know what I mean? Like the incentives to toe the party line are so big that even naturally, just using a full-on free market capitalist thought system, it makes sense to do it this way. It's like, would you
well,
like,
let me rephrase that because I think there's a better way to phrase that because
yeah.
what you've described is that a lot of people say that China is a communist country when it's not. It's more of a state capitalism.
Yeah,
China
one of the silliest things to say in modern times is that China's a communist country. It's not.
China is very much so like how the Third Reich was, in that you have companies that are uh, sort of seamlessly integrated into the government, like Alibaba and all the other big companies that do business directly with the party are no different than how the People's whatever were in Germany, in my opinion. And there's you get the same kind of censorship, you get the same kind of party control over shit, and like what happens is because China is so big, you have all these state capitalism organs that are up at the top that are controlled by the party. But then at a certain level, if you're a little guy, there is no fucking way for a party of any number of people to actually regulate every little ant that is at the very bottom of the pyramid. So at the basic level, at the very bottom, you can get away with a lot of shit. You can do pretty much whatever you want. And in that regard, you're free as long as you don't piss off the party, which I wouldn't accept. I wouldn't want to live in a country where I can do whatever I want as long as I don't piss off the party. But I mean, I kind of do, because I live in a country where technically there's censorship. There's anti-Holocaust denial laws here, but because I'm just some fucking fat American and I'm not trying to influence politics at all, I can get away with saying a lot of shit that maybe a local wouldn't get away with. But I wouldn't want to live in a country that actually moderates my speech.
No. I would agree with that.
Our governments don't harvest organs from political prisoners, but if this was the kind of far right authoritarian fascism that people seem to want, yeah, they would.
They would. It makes a lot of economic sense. It really does.
Look at the fucking water purification shit in Manchuria. Look up the weird experiments that the Germans did, making some chick's urethra go into her ass, where she later died of infection. Like, there was weird, freaky, perverted fucking shit that was happening in fascist countries. No different than.
Oh, and it's not just political prison, but it is actually just all prisoners.
Our government has censorship of the internet. Yes, they do. Good luck if you're in Germany. Go try to look up that fucking Waffen SS song. Like, it's not as bad as in China, where they don't have their own little eye internet, where they pervert absolutely everything. But you can rest assured that EU is going there. I don't see how that's even debatable. Like, if you think that the European Union is not going to be as strictly filtered as China is 10, 20 years, I don't know what to say. Oh, somebody wants to know if the Chinese can jack off to anime titties.
As in, can they physically, or I mean,
are you allowed to download Japanese hentai in China?
Oh yeah, there's so much porn of every kind in China. That's absolutely the same.
I thought that porn was banned in China.
Officially, yeah, but it's officially banned in lots of places.
Anime is censored in China.
Doesn't mean you can't get it. Like, I don't know about the US, but I'm still using Pirate Bay, on the daily.
Pirate Bay. As long as it's up, they have trouble keeping it. They still play that fucking whack-a-mole
literally
game.
a million proxies everywhere.
I mean, like, it's just, I look at China the same way I look at shit like the United Arab Emirates. The UAE has a lot of shit like China has. It's a much smaller country with a lot more money per capita, so they can more rigorously implement kinds of things, and they do. They have facial recognition technology. They're a police state. Singapore is a police state. People don't shit on Singapore as much as they shit on China, and Singapore is a literal fucking police state where you get fined outrageous amounts of money for chewing gum and sticking it somewhere. Like, again, never stop whining about censorship in the US, because if you for a moment pause on that, it will get as bad as China very, very quickly. And they're trying to do it in the back end. And what's funny is that the Brett Kavanaugh thing happened recently, where I supported the nomination for Brett Kavanaugh because I didn't want to set the precedent that if all you want to do to get rid of a political opponent is to call them a rapist, and that's it. There's nothing you can do in response to that. That was my stance for supporting Kavanaugh, but Kavanaugh was a Bush Jr. era White Houser who was in support of the Patriot Act, which is the first domino to all this horrible fucking NSA bullshit that's happening constantly. And now our Supreme Court Justice is Brett Kavanaugh, and he's probably going to continue to step all over cyber privacy laws. So I mean, even I, with all my song and dance about censorship, I supported the nomination of somebody who is going to vote to reduce my rights in the near future and for the rest of his life. So I'm sorry if I'm not singing, a hard enough, taking a hard enough stance against China. China seems like a great place to make a lot of money off a lot of people who have a lot of money. And I would say that's the bottom line. If you want to make a lot of fucking money, put a party friendly app in their app store, because they don't use the Google Play Store. They use their own segregated market for apps.
Yes.
Go put a little app on that and make your fucking money off loot boxes and gambling and shit, and bring it
And
back
definitely
home.
don't piss off the government.
Don't piss off the government. Leave the skeletons out of the game. They don't like
Yeah,
skeletons.
bottom line, don't piss off the government, and you'll be okay.
Yeah, but otherwise, if you've got money, if you want to make money, China's a place to spend money. Definitely to
China
spend
has
money
a lot
too.
of money. Yeah, it's a good place to spend money for sure. I mean, it's got great things like chicken feet, which are delicious.
All right. Any other questions? Because this has been an hour and a half. I think that's a good place to call it quit. But somebody else got something that's burning them that I've somehow managed not to see. Somebody's asking about eating live fish in China, but I'm pretty sure that's the Japanese that eat the live fish.
Nope, there's a dish called live fish in China. You can find YouTubes of it being cooked. Essentially, what they do, they get a live fish, they gut it, and they score it, and they quickly dip it in starch, and they deep fry it, and they put it
That's
on a
awful.
plate.
What the
And
fuck?
they put a sauce over it, and when it's served, the fish's mouth is like still doing that gobble thing.
Nigga, that's awful.
But the rest of its body is covered in batter and deep fried and covered with a delicious sauce. It's awful. It's awful.
Ruin my fucking day. Okay, somebody is desperate eating live monkey brain.
Sounds like something that I think was more prevalent in the 30s in like the Indian continents. I know southern China did it as a fad for a short period, but once again, this was like 50 years ago. Not. I'm almost like close to certain that it doesn't, like, there's probably zero occurrence of that.
I mean, does somebody have a video of it that I can watch?
Haven't you seen Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom?
No. Is that a thing that happens in... Really?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
really?
yeah.
Chat's asking a question about something that happened in fucking Indiana Jones?
Probably.
Chinks drag live dogs behind their cars. Oh, what?
That was in Delhi, wasn't it?
What?
That wasn't in China. That was in Delhi, in Indiana Jones movie.
Oh, yes, I think so. Now that you mention it, yeah. Does China still torture animals because they think fear makes the meat taste better, even though adrenaline is bitter? Have you heard of
I'm not sure. No, I don't think that was. I think that might have just been a rumor. Yeah, like doesn't everyone know that torturing animals or making them scared make them taste like shit?
Is that a thing? I've never heard of this.
Yeah, like if animals are afraid, their muscles tighten up, and something to do with the blood flow, and basically their meat is less tender. It's like,
oh, somebody said Chinese love eating bitter foods, which is why they scare the fuck out of them before killing them.
Partially true. We like eating bitter food, but it's usually like vegetables and stuff. We have a thing called bitter melon, which it's exactly what it sounds like, and we stir fry it with eggs, and it's an acquired taste. I mean, I don't mind it. In terms of meat, like no, nobody wants bitter meat. That's ridiculous. And
Uh,
also, the difference between a scared animal and non-scared animal, the meat of it, is practically indiscernible, realistically.
okay, somebody wants to know about the Chinese welfare system. I don't think there is one, is there?
It's generally state run. Okay,
Okay.
so China still has a full-on what you would call a federal or a centralized welfare system. This is a latent from the communist era where essentially you would be designated a role, or for the rest of your life you'd be like a steel worker, or you'd be like a teacher or something. When you're retired, you would still get a salary. In China, that still exists. So when you're retired, you still get a central government paid salary that is equivalent to, I think it's like 50% of what your normal salary was when you were working. So yeah, so the government still look after you till you die. Basically, that's a
But if you're
legacy
like
from the
homeless or
communist
something, do you
era.
have like issues?
Well, if you're homeless, then you never had a job. So if you get,
So it's not really a welfare system. It's more of a pension system.
yeah, central plan. So okay, you're talking about
I'm talking about gimme
what do we call
dads.
it? Social security.
Well,
Um,
in Australia, it's like superannuation, but it's not superannuation. In the UK,
yeah,
it's called pension, and it's just
yeah,
shit that
yeah.
everybody gets. But people are asking specifically about gimme dads.
So literally, like, what do they do about the homeless? I'm gonna say I think nothing. I'm pretty sure homeless people are just homeless. Yeah, I don't think there's probably lots and lots of localized programs, but I don't think there's like a central policy to deal with homelessness.
Or like food shit. Or okay,
Uh, it's easy to get. Look, it's easy to get enough food in China. You won't starve. You've got a paid question. Is that a paid question?
yeah, that one is. I was going to say that till after you're finished answering. But how is
Okay.
gay rights in China?
Uh, Much like most of the Western world, you can't legally marry. It's no longer a criminal activity since might have been like as late as 2001. It, so in China, there's sort of two levels of existence. One is in the political arena, and one is sort of in the local general, I would say, real world arena. So, from a political sense, gay people don't have any extra rights, nor are they at this point. They don't have any disadvantages
Wasn't there
politically,
a story about like a gay or transgender like anchor being removed? Like a
oh yeah, no. One of the biggest, literally one of the biggest stars in China right now is this transgender woman who hosts you know how dating shows are massive in China. She hosts one of the biggest ones, so she's massively popular. She's a man who turned into a woman. I don't know what that's called. I think that's called a trans woman. But yeah,
a
she's
male or
literally one of
female?
the biggest stars. She's literally a billionaire. She's male to female. She's literally a billionaire, one of the most popular people in China. So from a policy and legal perspective, no, they can't legally get married. But then they don't have any like many disadvantages. In a sort of cultural, real world living sense, some old timers might still be against the idea. You culturally, you still might get frowned upon by some old timers, but generally, for the common person in China, it's pretty much just seen as is. It's kind of
The
just like
correct answer
anywhere
to
in the
this
West.
question to win over the audience is to say that
Kind of trendy,
the
huh?
correct answer to win over the audience is to say that all the trannies go to the Uyghur prisons, be detransitioned.
Well, this is
Is
about fact
doesn't
finding.
China have anti degeneracy shit though?
Yeah, it does. In general, nothing aimed at the LGBT community.
Well,
You know,
usually when people talk about the LGBT, that includes like all the weird kink shit.
but I mean, doesn't everyone have that weird kink shit?
No, it's mostly faggots.
What do you mean? What specifically?
Like if you're somebody who eats shit out of the toilet, you're almost always gay.
Really?
Yes.
Or German?
No, gay German. Germans have lots of gays too.
um,
Like if you look at a map of where furries are in the world, it's like
Isle in
Germany.
Germany.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you go into a country. You kill all the strong, and then you leave the weak to breed. You get a generation of furries. That's what,
Um,
and she,
well,
if he
no,
was
no,
smart,
they don't get sent to re-education camps with the Uyghurs. There are a lot of so while government policy is a certain way, there's also that doesn't mean that it doesn't make room for private enterprise. Now there is a lot, and you can probably look up plenty of documentaries on YouTube of private enterprises having essentially like those re-education camps for things like LGBT and even internet addiction stuff. And a lot of them, I think they still use in some of those private commercial enterprises, they still use like electrotherapy and stuff like that. But obviously, it's up to your family members to send you there.
well, I mean, I just get the feeling, like again, I've never been there, but I get the feeling that if you did some like some of the shit, like we watched a video yesterday where dominatrix would lead men around dressed in horse outfits, like a chariot, right?
Okay.
And I just get the feeling that if they ever did that in China, every single one of them would end up in a psychiatric hospital for the rest of their lives to be treated for their degeneracy.
You mean in public?
Yes.
No. There was a girl in Shanghai who rode a horse around the city in a dominatrix costume. Um,
No,
the
a
police stopped
man,
her.
a human being, pulling the chariot by their mouth. It's not a horse.
Oh,
It's a man in a horse costume.
yeah. Look, they'll do something about it, but like it's the actual result isn't anywhere near as bad. Like the police will probably stop them after because it's starting to cause like a public focus. So the police will probably just tell them to stop it. They won't throw them in jail. It's just like the chick who rode a horse in a dominatrix uh, uniform. The police, after a couple of hours of her riding on the street, police told her to stop, and she did. And it'd be the same with a guy pulling a horse-drawn chariot. Oh, sorry, a guy pulling a man-drawn chariot around the streets in China. The police will probably catch on and just tell her, hey, stop this, you fucking idiot. What's wrong with you?
I just realized that my timer said an hour and a half. It's actually been 3.5 hours. I had a refresh, and then
Since what?
it's 1 a.m. my time since we started talking. I didn't
Oh
realize.
fuck! Since we started, we've been talking for 3.5 hours.
Yeah, my timer
Jesus
said
fucking
for an
Christ,
hour
we
and a
have, haven't we?
half. It lied to me.
Yeah. Well, yeah. No, like I said, this is a big topic. We probably have to. If people are interested, I'd be happy to do a smaller series or something, or answer more questions later on. I'd be happy to do more of it because yeah, it is definitely a very big topic. And it's not often that you get like I haven't found that many people who are sort of like me that are westernized but still very central in both ways. Like I know a lot about both cultures. Usually people who are around here are like the ABCs, like the Australian born or the American born Chinese, where they're very Western, or they're kind of fobs where they're just fresh off the boat and still very Chinese. I kind of edge between both worlds, if you know what I mean. And I'm quite familiar with both.
Yeah.
I definitely like sharing what I know.
And people are very angry about the animals.
Which animals? Oh, all of them, I guess.
Yeah, why do you murder all the animals and snort their bones as dust to get hard?
Um, I guess the exact reason to get hard.
But, oh, okay. Last question. Does the Chinese government promote herbal medicine to keep traditional medicine to keep people from wanting real medicine?
They definitely promote traditional medicine, not to keep you from wanting real medicine, because you can get real medicine. You know,
The poor
you can
can't.
get any medicine.
The poor can't.
Yeah, they can. Like you literally buy antibiotics over the counter in China,
But if
which is
you're a
really
fucking
fucking
rice
bad. Which is
farmer,
really fucking bad. No. Literally, you can buy antibiotics really cheaply over the counter in China, which is actually fucking terrible. Um, this is why you're discovering the world's first like basically antibiotic resistant, you know, stream of bacteria and stuff. They found it in China and they found one in Russia. But this is why. It's because you can just buy antibiotics over the counter. But yeah, you can buy pretty much anything
I'm
over the
calling your
counter,
bluff.
and it's very cheap.
That's bullshit.
It's not a bluff.
The poor in
What are you
China just
saying?
fucking die. They can't afford
No,
medicine.
they just buy they just
They can't
buy
buy it. They don't
medicine.
make any money.
Yeah, they can. Medicine's cheap in China. Like, okay, they'll probably just die if they caught cancer, because cancer's fucking expensive anywhere. But you know, if they have a cold, if they have a headache, if they need some antibiotics, they just buy it over the counter. Like, you know, none of these things. Basically, anything that's like still within the patent period is expensive, right? Anything that's not is fucking hella cheap, because the Indians and the Chinese and the fucking whatever are all making it. Like Tylenol, you know, that costs like nothing. Most antibiotics cost like nothing.
I don't know. I get the feeling
Um,
that the government promotes herbal medicine because if people started demanding like
no, it doesn't. No, because people like there's big enough demand for everything. The government does promote herbal medicine, probably because one, they believe it all. Look, there is some truth in herbal medicine. Some are just crackpots, others not. But there is some, you know, some validity in it, like scientifically. But I guess the government mostly do it to preserve culture.
All right, somebody I said that was the last question. I lied. Somebody paid $2 to ask you, what do you think about black men, or what do they think
Me
about
personally,
No,
what is China
China.
think about black men? Um, Once again, one of those multifaceted questions. But I can tell you what. Okay, so some people think. Okay, so an overall um, thought is that they smell bad. Like, black people generally smell bad. You can sort of, if a black person sits in the subway in
Oh,
China.
have you ever seen those pictures of like the black guy like
Yeah,
holding onto the rail, and the women are like holding their noses and leaning away?
yeah, exactly. They'll move a couple of seats away, or they'll hold their noses. That's an overall thing. Now, black men in specifically in China, like, you know, black people in general, they're seen as stinky. They're seen as sometimes violent. Black men in China, once again, with anything, you know, some of the local Chinese women like it, others not.
Oh, that's
But that's
gross.
the
Xi
same as
Jinping needs to fix that.
that's the same in the US, though. You know,
Don't
I
remind
mean,
me.
I'm sure if you can go into Pornhub and you can find a
Don't
million.
remind me. I don't need to be reminded of the death of the West. Okay, I'm already fucking there. I'm already sad.
So what do they think about black men in particular? You know, some good, some bad. There's
They're
not
good
an
if they can do.
overall.
There would be no China without the Communist Party. If they can sing that
Uh,
song perfectly, they can get around in China.
oh yeah, some become popular. You know, minor celebrities.
All right. Anything else you can think of?
We're at almost 4 hours, aren't we? Jesus Christ.
Yes. I didn't realize it had gone on so long. To be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's just an interesting conversation, if anything.
Well, hopefully people found that. I think chat's been fucking apocalyptic for most of that. Like, again,
Well, yeah, no,
I'm
it's
not
good.
to
It's good
repeat
entertainment.
myself. It's just like, you know, even in shitholes like Saudi Arabia and fucking, you think places like Ukraine and Saudi Arabia and China would just be the worst places to live. But for day to day life, like, I've been to many different countries. It's not all
He
that
really
different.
has.
It's
He's
not.
been to many, you
They
know,
know the
quote
countries I've
unquote
been to.
shitholes. Yeah.
Life, day to day life is basically all the fucking same. If you have enough money to get
Anywhere you
by
go.
in like the U.S., you have enough money to get by anywhere, and your quality of life basically doesn't change. If anything, going to a poorer country gives up. Like the surveillance and shit. Like, that's just not my problem. It's not my problem. It'll get here eventually, but for now, it's not my problem. And if I wanted to go to China and make money in China, I think the doors are open enough to do that as long as I'm willing to pay the games. But
yeah. Don't play edgeball like Dolce and Gabbana did.
yeah. All right. Well, thank you, my friend. Talking.
Sorry, my pleasure, man. Anytime.
And dealing with the abuse of the internet.
Sorry, I haven't actually been reading any of the comments. I don't have I've got the stream just sitting there, but I haven't been really paying attention.
All right.
I only see the questions that get paid, basically, because they're big and blue.
All right. Well, I guess take it easy. I'm gonna play my outro song if you want to hear it.
Yeah, let's do it.
And let's see, what's the name of this? Tian, Xiao, place of appointment. It's apparently the English. All right. Take it easy, guys.
我住在大海边上，是个很远很远的地方，无数个故事要对你讲，要对你讲。我出生在冬天，是个很冷很冷的早上，无数首歌要对你唱，要对你唱。无论到明天是刮风下雨，还是将来要去哪里，我要一直这样听到天亮，一直听你对我说，不管路有多远，时间有多长，我们最终还会走向约定的地方。无论到明天是刮风下雨，还是将来要去哪里，我要一直这样听到天亮，一直听你对我说，不管路有多远，时间有多长，我们最终还会走向约定的地方。我住在大海边上，是个很远很远的地